Sort of Coming Chapter 961. The old scholar strode across the threshold and waved his hand to indicate that everyone did not need to change positions. The old scholar sat on the bench beside Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan's lips moved slightly, probably because he could not call out the patriarch. Chen Pingan took out a jar of wine and a set of wine glasses for the 12 flower gods, both of which were discussed in the Confucian temple last time. The old scholar took the wine glass. After filling the wine with the millet grains, he placed the wine jar on the bench beside him. The old scholar remembered something and took out a large stack of red envelopes from his sleeves. Each there are 2 snowflakes in the red envelope, not much money, but the Chinese New Year auspicious words on the red envelope, not long after the ink talent, was written by the old talent before leaving the gondolin. Therefore, after the old scholar handed the red envelope to the millet grains, he smiled and reminded, "Millet grains, don't lose the red envelopes, they are worth a small amount of money, and they are mainly rare and rare. If you are short of money in the future, you can go Yuguanhu Academy or God's Sect in Aquarius, find a buyer who knows the goods and ask for less than 2 grains of rain. Don't sell it." Cui Dongshan gently shook the red envelope in his hand, and rustled. It was 2 snowflake coins, not Xiaoshu Qian or Guyu Qian. As a result, the old Xiuzai slapped him on his head. Millet grains held red envelopes in both hands, bowed their heads in a bow, and shouted in a clear voice, "Master Wenqing, Happy New Year! Thank Master Wenqing, I wish Master Wenqing a blessing in the East China Sea and a better life every day." The old scholar stroked his beard and smiled, Okay. Even Chen Pingan has a red envelope." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Sir, how old I am, I'll forget it." The old scholar shook his head and said, "On Mr. S. side, you are all children, accept it, take it quickly." Chen Pingan had to accept the red envelopes. The handwritings above were all written by the same person. However, the content of each red envelope was a little different, such as Cui Dongshan's red envelope, which reads New Year's luck, and Chen Ping's red envelope. It says, "Safety for the family." Since it can be confirmed that it is not the handwriting of Li Sheng and Jing Xingping, it can only be the Most Holy Master. The old scholar took a sip of his drink. Time is always the most unreasonable, just like a thief who has never lost a fight, and has never failed to steal something. Chen Pingan has grown up, and it's a year of no confusion. Xiao Baoping and Pei Qian have also grown up. So Wenqing's lineage, and now there are only Jun Qian's disciples, and Jing Yugan is still a serious child. So the old scholar turned his head to look at Jing Yugan, and smiled and said, "Fuck again, take advantage of your younger brother and uncle is still young, very young, don't worry about growing up. You don't have to be too sensible when you are young and go out. Don't be afraid of things that dominate your mind. If you're arguing, you'll be noisy, you'll be able to fight, and you don't have to run away if you can't fight. You should report the name of the young master and ask the other party if you're afraid." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "If it doesn't work to report the name of the junior uncle, you should quickly report the name of the ancestor." The old talent laughed and said, "I have reported my name, and be careful of being beaten twice." Jing Yuqian whispered, "Master said I have a bad temper, so I don't want to fight with people." In fact, before Lu 16 left Harantianxia, he and Jing Yugan did mention that, if someone was really bullied, don't bother your ancestor, just ask your little uncle. The old scholar complained, "Nonsense, I saw Jun Qian when I turned back, and I had to say a few words about him. Why did you have a bad temper? Treat others, be polite, well knowledgeable." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Senior brother Junqian is right. The disciples of our Wenqing family's personal transmission and retransmission, which one has a better temper? Well, maybe Aquarius and Sunny are a little better." Li Baoping squinted and smiled, so. Xiao Yingqing smiled and said nothing. The old scholar raised his glass and took a sip. That's right and right. Cui Dongshan grinned, and dared to talk back to the old scholar in person and tear down the stage, and the old scholar still felt that there was nothing, really only his husband. The old scholar asked, Pingon, are you sure to re-enter the 5 realms in the near future? Chen Pingon nodded and said, I'm sure. The old scholar was relieved and said, then I can approve the issuance of a Shanshui Mansion newsletter, which is to help you clarify. After the Battle of Jintui Washan, there were a lot of falls and it took many years of retreat. Today, the Zhongtu Confucian Temple's restrictions on the Zongmen Mansion report are the strictest in thousands of years. In addition to the decision made in the last Confucian Temple discussion, it is not allowed to report the progress of the Wild War without authorization, and even the war itself is not allowed. Any Shantao immortal mansion makes unreasonable remarks, and the news about any great monk on the top of the mountain should not be mentioned casually. The few exceptions are the criminal officer house's killing of Nan Guangzhou and the Shanhaizong. Privately told Haren the world, the sword immortals from the Great Wall of Jianqi jointly asked the sword barbarians, and Chen Pingan's sword opened to you a mountain and the latest engraved city head alone. This is because the Shanhaizong violated the rules and acted arbitrarily. If it were not for Wen Xing himself afterwards helping to intercede, plus the young hidden official who is famous in the world, and the close disciple of the old scholar, so in this matter, since Wen Sheng is willing to open the internet, the Confucian Temple has used a major event to make it smaller. Shanhaizong's symbolic punishment measures fined Shanhaizong a sum of money from the gods, and all the income from the debao was turned over to the Confucian Temple, as well as a negligent recording. Otherwise, the writer of Shanhaizong's debao should have been in the Confucian Temple's merit forest. Studying sages' books hard. I heard that my husband was engraving in the city head earlier, and I felt it was out of the picture. Cui Dongshan tutored, when this mansion is reported to the world, I heard that my husband is now in the Yuaning state, and I immediately thought it was okay. It is not difficult to understand why the veteran talent would make such an extra effort, in order to be able to reduce criticism. Since he is the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jinqi, why not go to the barren world? Been there. But there will definitely be new questions next. Now that you can engrave on the top of the city, why not go to the wild world again? So this mansion newspaper is just an explanation. Cui Dongshan said, in the debao, remember to mention that our Qingping sword sex Mi chief has already broken the border. The old scholar was puzzled. Mi Jianxian finally broke the border. Cui Dongshan said with no good air, I just broke the border. The old scholar slapped his knee and laughed loudly, this is good. A swordsmanship sect, there is a fairyland sword repair as a golden sign, there is no more worry about the tree to attract the wind, it is the only reason for others to worry about it. What's more, this great sword immortal is still Miyu, the shadow of the famous tree of man, and the nickname of Mi Lianyao that Miyu won in the 2 realms of the earth and immortals is still very important in the Haoran world. The old Shutsai said, just now, as the initiator of Han Fuzi, I just made a trivial suggestion. The Confucian Temple urgently convened a small-scale mountain meeting in Zhongtu including Shushan Mountain and Jiui Mountain. The 5 sacred monarchs are all here, and there are dozens of great country and mountain monarchs together. Of course, they used a method similar to Lu Kaishin and Yufati to visit Xiandu Mountain today. The chat was very lively, especially when traveling around in Hawaii. A few Lien come and go back with happiness, look at their appearance, it seems that there is still a little bit of meaning. The saint of rites still rarely show up. Yaxing went to the wild world and was responsible for the specific affairs of the Abbot Confucian Temple in the wild world. Today, the Central 2 Confucian Temple is really in charge of Wen Xing. The 3 leaders and deputy leaders of the Confucian Temple are now in the Confucian Temple, and there is only one deputy leader. This Han Fuzi is regarded as Wen Xing's helper. Therefore, the old scholar was ridiculed as a housekeeper by an old master surnamed Li. These days, old scholars are at the Confucian temple, and being busy is truly busy, spinning day and night. This time the Confucian temple called the mountain gods to discuss matters, because the water gods all have the darts. You mountain gods can't watch from the wall. It doesn't sound good to spread them out. They are more or less doing practical things. People want to face the tree and want bark. Somehow they block the world. You can speak for a long time, so you don't need to slander you, the mountain gods, who will just stand by and enjoy the blessing. It's just that all the high-ranking mountain gods of all countries except the 5 mountains of the Middle-earth have clearly sensed that the old scholar seems to be deliberately targeting Huailian, even the best-tempered Yanzishan female mountain god, the named bitter vegetable. Zhu Yuxian was very eye-catching. She slapped the handle of the chair vigorously, and directly refuted Wen Sheng. Zhu Yuxian also threatened to stay in this Confucian temple and talk about the facts, not to say a few innuendo-strange things. Wen Sheng, you are so yin and yang. She will leave on the spot, and please don't worry about Yanzishan. Yanzishan will not choose what to do. The Confucian temple will give you a list afterwards, where the duties are, and it is incumbent. She and Yanzishan will definitely do them one by one, but today she will never continue to be angry with the Confucian temple. It is rare for Zhu Yuxian to speak so sternly. Sui Shan had to stand up and plan to exit first. The old scholar hurriedly stood behind Zhou Yu and pressed Sui Shan Shanjin's shoulders with both hands. But glanced at the god named Tianjin of Mount Guishan, who had to fall back into the chair as soon as he lifted his butt. Chen Pingan said softly, "Actually, the reason why I stayed behind in those mountains, I guessed that I had been indirectly instructed by the Holy Master in advance, and deliberately prevented me from climbing, which had little to do with the 4 mountain monarchs." The old scholar said with a guilty expression, "Ah. There is such a tortuous hidden feeling. That is because the husband misunderstood a few of them. It's okay, the husband has no other skills, but the least afraid of misunderstandings. See you next time. Open the skylight to speak brightly, and when it is opened, if they are really angry, Mr. Big Deal will take the initiative to come to the door to apologize." In fact, after the Confucian Temple Mountain God meeting was over, in Gongdalin, the old scholar waited for a few visits. As expected, the 5 gods came together. Zhu Yuxian first apologized, and the old scholar thanked her instead. After all, this the female mountain monarch's phrase, "Don't pick your sons, do them one by one," is the result that the old scholar or the Confucian temple wanted. Zhu Yuxian took the lead in expressing his attitude, and the other mountain gods knew it. As for the noisy during the proceedings, such as a few dishes of wine and dishes for people to drink, to be honest, those mountain monarchs of the great dynasty, maybe they want to replace the gods of the 5 mountains, and Wen Xing himself sneered a few words. Only talking about the 3 religions debate, before the emergence of old scholars, they were almost always the Buddhas of Western Buddhism. Those who are not only proficient in the theory of classics and laws and the masters of Sanzang, who are extremely familiar with the other 2 teaching questions, have overwhelmed the Confucian Middle-earth Confucian Temple and the Taoist Bai Yujing. Even if the Confucian Temple and Bai Yujing had occasional victories, they had never connected, especially Confucianism, which has always lost. There are so many, so the old talents turned out to be born and won 2 consecutive debates. Many of the 2 groups of high-ranking scholars who are known as Buddhism and Taoism directly transferred to the Confucian school. They were once regarded as one kind of unprecedented feat. Now the old Master Li, who is temporarily working at the Confucian temple, once said a popular and fair word. "Old scholars don't talk strange things with your hippie smiles. Are you serious about quarreling with you?" The old scholar was probably worried that the close disciple would think too much, whether he was causing trouble for himself, and explained with a smile, "Zhou Yu is actually like Ming Jing in his heart, and he is congenial with me. It's simply a reunion after being separated for many years. Brothers, he couldn't turn my face with anyone. The rest of Hualien and the others had a good impression of you. As for the fellow Tianjin Daoist from Guishan, he used to be in the same line as Wenxing. It's difficult to turn over the old accounts. Tianjin Daoists still feel that face is up and they are a bit unable to come to Taiwan. This time you visit Guishan. Once he did get the secret advice from the Confucian temple, he didn't dare to show up. I can't explain it to you, but I can only ask the temple to go to the foot of the mountain, bite the bullet and swear with you, and see that you are very polite, neither making troubles nor cursing others. In fact, in his heart now, he is also comfortable with you. Too many, my husband deliberately asked a friend to preach a few words for Guishan, saying that Guishan is such a big shelf, it is worthy of the spine of Guishan, and he dares not to treat guests, even if people don't meet, he just let him hidden official headed back to the mansion. Therefore, in the Confucian temple, Guishan has a lot of face, and whenever young people mention Guishan in their leisure time, they must give a thumbs up and sincerely admire our fellow Tianjin Daoist. Now that he has gained face, the steps are also there. After this disagreement is over, on the Gongdalan side, the Tianjin Daoist asked me to talk, saying that he welcomes the hermit to go to Guishan as a guest. Anyway, the drinks on the Guishan side are very good, sir. I agreed to help you first. As for whether to go to Guishan in the future, it's a very random thing. Chen Pingan couldn't help smiling and said, it's really embarrassing for Mr. Shiping and Old Masterly to be a microphone for the husband. Cui Dongshan whispered, it turns out to be here to show your contact secretly. Li Baoping gave the big white goose a thumbs up, and exclaimed, Brother Cui's brain is still tough. Cui Dongshan smiled awkwardly, what is it? The millet grain scratched his face, and the big white goose was doing what I said. Chen Pingan took out a small wooden box from his sleeve, handed it to Chao Sunny, and said with a smile, there is a very good ancient sword pill in it, named Naiwen. You can try to see if it can be refined. Think of it as a congratulatory gift from your husband. The carved patterns on the wooden box are exquisite and exquisite. There are many auspicious elephants such as priests crossing dragons, female fairies riding phoenixes, and ancient real people riding turtles. Chao Sunny hesitated, but stood up, took the wooden box with both hands, and thanked her husband properly. Pei Qian rolled his eyes, and the one with the most rules was Chao Mumutu. Chen Pingan looked at his husband, and then said to Chao Qingqing, the gentleman of that year also retrieved a sword pill with a very high rank from Suishan. It's a pity that my aptitude is average and I have never been able to the true refining of my Jianwan into a life thing can only be regarded as a kind of middle refining. The old scholar smiled while stroking his beard. What is this called? Chen Pingan went on to introduce, this sword pill was once the treasure of the townhouse in Xiang Mansion. It was originally the incumbent head of the Dafu Academy. It was presented to Wu Yi, the eldest daughter of the Dafu Academy, as a gift for her to enter the middle 5 realms. Wu Yi is also the founder of Xiang Mansion in Huangtinghua. For so many years, Wu Yi has never opened all the bands on this sword box. It is estimated that she was planning to hit a certain sword fairy embryo as a disciple receiving ceremony. Send out. This is what I missed. It's a veritable leak, so Jianwan must be sent out early, so as not to dare to see Wu Yi afterwards. If she regrets it, she really wants to get it back. It can be said that it has been given away, and it is said that this rare sword pill named Naiwen can be paid at a discount. As for the thing, it will not be returned. This is a kind of active recognition of the Lord similar to psychic things on the mountain, and it is also a kind of opportunity for the immortal family that can be met and cannot be sought. To put it simply, it means that Chao Qingqing did not do anything, and had already refined this mud pill on the spot. As for when the exercise will be successful, Chao Qingqing is nothing more than time-consuming water milling efforts. After that, A mud pill, flying sword haunted the branch like a bird, spinning around its owner, Chao Qingqing. Then everyone looked at Chen Pingan. Even millet grains are no exception. Is it a good person who is really average aptitude? Cui Dongshan deliberately hiccups, helping Mr. to break the embarrassing atmosphere. The old scholar couldn't help but laugh, lifted the wine glass, and smiled, drink and drink. After drinking the wine, Chen Pingan looked calm and smiled and said, Sonny, I am not very familiar with the mountain monarch of Jushu Mountain, Huilian, but now there is a monarch who is known as the Blue Bull Taoist priest. I revisited the old place. I met the old man for the first time on the night ship. It was very close. It happened that this old man happened to be one of the 3 resident old people of Sia in ancient times. One of them is Niaoju Mountain. Next time you visit the divine continent of Middle-earth, you can go to the elders to humbly ask about the true origin of this sword pill. Chao Qingqing smiled and nodded. Okay, the students must take a trip to Jushu Mountain and Niaoju Mountain. Chen Pingan suddenly asked, Sir, the one who slashed the dragon. The old Shotsai smiled and said, although this senior on the mountain cannot be regarded as a pure sword repair in the 14th realm in the narrow sense, don't underestimate this dragon slayer. Cui Dongshan curled his lips. Of course it's amazing, I have dragon slaying skills, please watch Jingguang. Besides, this guy is still Jing Zhezhong's master. People like Jing Zhuzhong don't mind deceiving their masters and destroying their ancestors, but the problem is that if outsiders dare not deal with his master, then the Taishu Mountain, which is like the closed mountain, is the best example. The old scholar nodded. It is indeed very powerful. Later generations of Qi training can only speculate about this person's swordsmanship through some oral deeds. In fact, Chen Qingli's battle of slashing the dragon has deceived a certain part, and it is the most. The key truth, about 3,000 years ago, the appearance of Chen Qinglu was originally a solitary case. It is not only a genus of the dragon, but also not very accurate for the entire world. It should be said that it is about the entire human world, and all the water, both descendants and Narcissus, are an invisible suppression of the avenue. Back then, Chen Qinglu used his sword alone to kill the dragons. Didn't he know that his husband occupies one of the 4 fairy swords? When I meet in the future, I will call him Brother Zhao. One of the 4 fairy swords, Tai Bai, except for the scabbard, the sword body was divided into 4, and each recognized its owner, namely Chen Ping'an, Xiao Yu, Fei Ran, and Lu Kai. And because Xiao Yu had studied with a scholar for many years on that lonely island overseas, in a sense, he was actually half a student for nothing. Wanting to gather a fairy sword, Tai Bai, again means that Xiao Yu must at least ask the other 3 people to ask the sword, and that all 3 questions must be successful. So there was a conversation about this fairy sword in Dali capital city. Xiao Yu took the lead to speak, but just called him by name and called Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan immediately reminded, it's not the truth, you have to call the little uncle. Then it was cold. After all, the 2 parties were discussing business matters, and Chen Pingan smiled and said, if Wen Jian has beaten Junior Master, you can take my Yao sword. Only Chen Pingan added, of course, you can ask me for a punch. Zhao Yu is a thief, so he smiled and asked, how about studying? Chen Pingan smiled and said, learning. You are still far behind. Zhao Yu smiled and did not speak, as if 4 words were written on his face, disapproving. Chen Pingan said, Mr. Qi said that the truth is in the book, but the man is outside the book. Zhao Yu thought for a while and nodded. In this way, I am really far from the little uncle. Li Baoping asked in doubt, is Xiao Yu Jianqiu? Chen Pingan shook his head and said, it's not a sword repair, at least not for the time being. Maybe he wants to follow the same path of practice as Mr. Bai. Li Baoping said, Xiao Yu is more confessing to death, and he is still very smart. Because I am a fellow countryman, but also a classmate, so I know the roots and know the bottom. But for the school Mengtong back then, perhaps for the little girl in red, who was in turmoil every day, now I always think of that she must be the last to step onto the school and the first peer to leave the school, or there will be more or less psychological shadows. The key is that this little girl walks alone every day. On the way to and from school, with a small school bag on her shoulders, she will bounce around and drink. Sometimes someone asked, she said she was practicing martial arts and learning boxing. Li Huai doesn't have to say anything. Even Zhao Yu, who was also born in Falu Street, just went to the school when he was a child, because he accidentally bullied a little girl with croissants. He was chased by Li Baoping with a branch and hit the door all the way home. As a result, Zhao parents asked her why she did it. The little girl in the red cotton-padded jacket replied, saying that it doesn't work to reason with him. If she doesn't admit her mistake, she is convinced that she can't deceive me. They were all neighbors in the neighborhood, and it was a fight between children. Zhao's parents couldn't say anything. In private, they didn't dare to let Zhao Yu fight back by himself. She really couldn't beat the little girl who liked to cross the wall when she was a child. Then, the next day, Zhao Yu went home from get out of class. The child was pitiful, with footprints all over his body. It turned out that although Zhao Yu had deliberately bent around on the way from school and carefully selected a route home, he was still waiting for the rabbit by the little girl in the red cotton-padded jacket. I happened to be caught upright. I just jumped up and kicked. I like to file a complaint, don't you? I won't do it, I will do it. But in fact, in order to ensure that she only moved her feet and not her hands, the little girl bumped into the wall several times, and finally got her feet. She still insisted on accompanying Xiao Yao to go home, but Xiao Yao just went out the next day. I found that Li Baoping was squatting outside and blocking the door. The child was afraid and wronged, and suddenly felt sad. He squatted on the ground holding his head, howling and crying. The limping girl walked to him and asked him. Recognizing whether he was wrong, Zhao Yu, with his nose and tears all over his face, was still reluctant to admit his mistake, but suddenly began to roll all over the floor. If you don't have a chance, if you can't fight, you will move to the rescue. The little girl in the red cotton-padded jacket turned around and walked out more than a dozen steps with her shoulders high and low, and then suddenly stopped. She turned her head and looked at the same age who had stopped crying while sitting on the ground. She motioned her with her eyes and waited. When we arrived near the school, the two of us competed again. Even if Xiao Yu are like this, Lin Shuyi and Dong Shuijing are even more of a group of people. If they think too much, I'm afraid they will have a handful of bitter tears. So in the old school in the small town, the husband often taught there. The little girl in the cotton-padded jacket first touched the palm of her hand, and then was punished to stand at the back of the school or outside the school's window. Sulking. After drinking almost half a pot of wine, the old scholar was already flushed and stood up with a smile. I have to get it back. There is still a lot of business waiting. It is rare for Cui Dongshan to have nothing to say about it. It is not an old scholar who is hypocritical. Busy is really busy, and it is not a joke to shoulder the affairs of the world. Of course, it is not possible to take a leisurely moment, but for some Confucian temple decisions, it may only be a moment of difference between speed and slowness. The final result presented in the wild world is the difference between clouds and mud. Everyone in the house stood up and followed the old Xiuzai to the outside. The old Xiuzai wanted to cross the threshold, so he shrank the mountains and rivers and returned to the Gongda forest. He just walked outside the gate of the house, and walked again. He walked to a cliffside pavilion on Mishue Peak. Only then did the old Xiuzai stop. He just raised his head and glanced at the plaque. The old man stopped picking up the steps and walked up into the Nayun pavilion with a wide view and looked at Chen Pingon. A few of them smiled and said, "Don't send it away, let's all return." Old people get old year after year, but it is difficult for young people to get younger again. The old scholar looked at them, proud, but also inevitably a bit sad. They wanted their younger generations to grow up with the truth in the book, but did not want the children to grow up early. It was just this extremely contradictory thought. Probably only when you become a father and a teacher can you truly appreciate it. The old man forced himself to put all his words in his stomach, and just smiled. If you have the opportunity in the future, you will go to the Gondolin of the Confucian temple together. If you have any books you want to read, it is not a problem to make a list of books in advance. Chen Pingon took the lead in saying goodbye. The old scholar nodded with a smile, and returned to the Confucian temple one step across the continent. The sky is bright and the moon is bright, and the world is in a hurry. Sword of Coming Chapter 962. In the bright moon night, the whole land was full of moonlight like water, and the group left Nianting. Pei Qian took Li Baoping back to his residence. They reunited after a long time, and there were so many things to talk about. After Chen Pingon and Cui Dongshan confirmed that there is no hidden danger for Chao Qingqing, Cui Dongshan suggested that Chao Qingqing should not rush to formally practice his sword, and wait until the Golden Core realm is stabilized before going to Jingxing Peak. Of course, there is no objection. Chao Qingqing took Xing Yuqian and left together, and the two sides lived very close. Walking on the quiet mountain road in the dead of night, Xing Yugan asked tentatively, "Brother Chao, can you tell me a little bit of concern? The main thing is that the student of the little uncle is gentle and elegant. At first glance, he is very capable of reading." "That's right, Brother Chao is the flower explorer of the Dali dynasty. Every time Master mentions this matter, he is also quite happy." Xing Yugan felt that sect Master Cui was a strange person. As for senior sister Pei, Xing Yugan was also afraid. How could he not be afraid? Looking at the Shanshui Dibao on the transcontinental ferry, there were more than 2 diaries mentioning Xing Qian about the female great master on the Jinjiazu battlefield, and Xing Yugan always had to be frightened. It's a figure far away. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. It turned out to be good. She turned out to be the disciple of the little uncle's pioneer, and suddenly became her own sister Pei. Now every time she talks to sister Pei, she doesn't stammer. Xing Yugan has already made him feel very heroic. Chao Yingqing smiled and said, "Is it because of my background that I always feel a little awkward when I met my husband and us seniors and sisters?" Xing Yegan nodded vigorously, "Yes, worry. I didn't think it was anything special, because a certain friend always likes to use this to talk about things. I don't think about it anymore, but I have to think about it. Alas, the more I think about it, the more angry I will become. It's really boring." Chao Yingqing smiled and said, "Then you will have to thank Tan Yingzhou sincerely tomorrow." Zheng was confused again. "Oh. I don't think I'm angry with her. I'm already very manly, why should I thank her?" Chao Sunny said slowly, "There are some things, I just say some things. It seems that everyone deliberately does not say, in fact, they have been deliberately saying it. Such kindness is of course very good, but in the long run, it may also be a burden. Sometimes it's better to be clear. If you don't avoid it, it runs away by itself. Avoiding it, it is just like our shadow, the way others look at us, the private discussions we think, just like the road of life, the daylight during the day and the moonlight at night. Let us let go of something most in our hearts, like a shadow." The big sister said that together with the things that are close by, plus the 1,000 grains of rain money, she can be regarded as lent to the younger brother in Qingping Jianzhou, and no interest will be charged. Of course Cui Dongshan didn't dare to accept it, and he was obviously to be scolded by her husband, but at that time, looking at the attitude of the master sister, he never dared to accept it, and became afraid to refuse to accept it. It's better to be taught a few words by the husband in person than to be booked by the master sister. His mother, Find an opportunity to confess by Xian's hero score, and see if he can write off all his debts on the side of the master sister. The old real Yang Shuang and the few distinguished guests, together with the gift, are less than 20 grain rain coins, but after all, they are genuine grain rain coins. If they were converted into snow money, it would be a huge pile. There is also the Tongyin ferry, which has been docked at the Qingshandu at the moment, and the intercontinental wind kite ferry, one big and one small as neighbors. Chen Pingan asked, there are probably how many sword repair embryos can be found in the Daquan dynasty in 60 years? Can you have a rough estimate? Cui Dongshan thought for a while. Tongyi's kendo luck is really hard to describe in a word. According to common sense, within Jiazi, even if the territory of a country is dug 3 feet, it is estimated that they can only find to 2, 3. But after all, today is different. There is a husband here, and because the Yao family of Daquan can absorb the luck of a continent, the number can probably be doubled. Chen Pingan said, it's not easy on the Daquan side. 100 waste is waiting for prosperity. Money is needed everywhere, and it is necessary to maintain a frontier force that matches the first dynasty of Tongisao. After the mountain is cultivated, the rules are still the same. You can make a half-fold with the Oizumi husband for the heavenly materials and earth treasures they consume in refining the sword, and then report the amount. After Jiazi, if the Daquan dynasty is completely relieved, then there is no need to discount, as the fairy money is as much as it should be. Cui Dongshan hummed, listen to Mr. On the Pushan side, 2 land deeds worth at least 500 or 600 rain money were sent. One of the hills has been abandoned for many years, but it occupies a large area and has silver mines since ancient times. It has been mined or banned intermittently in history. It belongs to the private site of Pushan Yunkatang. The imperial court that recently restored Guizhou has long since opened the mountain. An enclave outside, because it was not a geomantic attraction, was able to escape the war. At the moment, there is a Xiaoxin-fused sect who has reported on the Tianmu Academy, dozens of displaced genealogical monks. They all became Shanzi Yesho, so they simply gathered together and held a group for warmth. It was considered to be a true sect. The first generation head was an old monk in the Longmen realm, because he had a little incense with Pushan, and Pushan was a consistent big it was only meant to save, so I took a few small summer money collected by the other party to sell iron and leased out the mountain. Previously, Planting Autumn said that this place can be used as a dojo for a golden core immortal, which is not a glorious word. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, Chio has a good vision and just left the 3 most valuable old Dragon Palace collections. Otherwise, it would not be estimated at 600 Guyu Qin. How could the gift be doubled? Chen Pingan couldn't help but smiled and cursed. It was left to Hu Chuling by Mother Chiu, and then Hu Chuling is still your direct disciple. You still have the face to say this? Chen Pingan turned his head and looked at the millet grains. Right, millet grains. The millet grain scratched his face. It shouldn't be right. The reason why Cui Dongshan intends to keep accounts is mainly to carefully record the old treasures of the town's demon towers of fellow Taoists. There are too many books. Only those isolated books can be booked separately. The treasures of various colors are so accumulated. If less becomes more, the total price is naturally particularly impressive. In the past, the cultivator was in King Pingfeng's Patriarch Hall and said it was 1,200 Gayukian. It cannot be said to be ill Lily reporting to the price, but this price belongs to the market price in the early years. Therefore, there is a huge premium, and there is no worry about sales at all, and it will only be rushed by the head. Will there be monks who feel that they have been killed? Come, just chop the side of Laozi's wallet. Therefore, Mr. Chongqiu, the accountant of Qingping Sword Sect, was hesitant at first, but he was reprimanded by Sect Master Cui, and then quoted the price out of his conscience. Fortunately, that young fellow has now also become a chair in the ancestral hall. Registered worship. In addition, the fat goose's almost complete family background. Maybe this is the real big gift. After all, it was an ascending realm ghost from Emperor Fuyuzo. Chen Pingon said, except for those belongings of Eugene that have already been returned, the remaining 40% should be kept untouched. In the future, he may need Eugene's help to excavate the big blasphemy. By then, these will belong to the family of this ghost and immortal, and they just need to find opportunities to return one by one. Cui Dongshan was surprised, and said, "Sir, only 30% of Xiandu Mountain is left." Chen Ping'an immediately stood up and was about to check the accounts. Cui Dongshan quickly closed the account books and said with a haha, "It is 40% of the wrong memory." Chen Pingon sat back in the bamboo chair and continued to build the bamboo box. How many of them are there just for real Guyu money? Are you Qingping Jianzong crying poor with me? Cui Dongshan was struck by lightning, heartbroken and said, "Xiaomi Li, listen, what the husband said is you Qingping sword sect, is it fair? You say hurting people and not hurting others." The millet grain shook his head and made a grimacing face. You guys. We are down to the mountain, we are down to the mountain. Cui Dongshan leaned on the chair, kicked his legs, and waved his sleeves. Millet hurried into the house, stood on tiptoe, reached out to cover his mouth, and whispered to the big white goose lying sideways on the handle of the chair. Although the ceremony is over, in fact, every mansion on Mishue Peak has its own guests visiting. For example, Zhang Shanfeng found the young sect master of Taihui Sword Sect, and said, "Sect Master Lu, I can't drink enough." Baisho laughed so much that his stomach hurts. Lu Jinglong smiled and said, "It's okay, I don't persuade you to drink." Helping Zhang Shanfeng and Baisho to pour 2 bowls of wine, Lu Jinglong raised the bowl in his hand, bumped gently with Zhang Shanfeng, and asked a long-timely curious question. Lu Jinglong explained with a smile, "Of course I don't like drinking, but those who are encouraged by someone to come to me for a drink, since they are his friends, I think they are definitely worth knowing." The young Taoist drank a big sip of wine and smiled. To be honest, being able to drink at the same table with Sovereign Lu was something that I couldn't even think about 20 years ago. Lu Jinglong smiled and said, "Surely there are not many people who believe in this kind of words." I'll count 1. The white head suddenly sighed, "The one who is most proud of the world, and the one in the wild world, and the white clothes in the north of Luzhou, North Ju, plus my white head, our surname is Bai, on the mountain, the surname." Zhang Shanfeng began to seriously ponder the mountain monk's surname Zhang. Lu Jinglong felt helpless. Baisho took a sip of the wine and nodded to himself. "I heard that the person who killed the dragon was surnamed Qin, plus the mellow scholar who carried the sun and the moon in Nanpa Suozhou, and my good brother Chen Pingon, whose surname was Qin. Yes, it's second best." Chiu Du brought his vinegar and vinegar to visit the 3 monks of Shui building in Old Yezigang. Luo Pishanzhang LV lived a long life, and brought his protege disciple Nalan Yubi, as well as the old Jia, who is the second manager of Fengyuan Ferry, to find the Taoist couple Wu Go and Xiao Mening together. Old Shenxian Jia took the initiative to become a cook, put on an apron, and personally fried a few dishes with wine. This naturally made the Taoist couple flattered, mainly because they hadn't really adapted to the style of Qingping Sword Sect. I believe they would not be fussing about such things soon. Lu Jubao and Yu Panshui took the initiative to find Yu Guizong. The place where the latter was staying was the premier mansion on Misiafeng. This is one of the reasons why in many sect celebrations, certain genealogical monks are willing to grit their teeth and give a share of money, but also have to sharpen their heads to participate. It's not just a matter of confusing a familiar face, but a lot of real sales, big business, really just got together to talk about it. Of course, for Lu Kaishin, it is definitely not in this list. On the way there, Yu Panshui smiled and said, "Even if it is the celebration of the beginning of the Zong, you can receive so many grains of rain money in one go. Isn't it a few? Lu Jubao nodded and said, last time, Wei Shi might be among the 5 realms. The last time, it was probably Yu Xian who created the next sect again. Once the next sect of a certain sect, and then there is a next sect, then it can be promoted to authentic or honored as ancestral court. This is one of the few in Howren's history. Zhong Kuei took the fat man and went to chat with old General Yao, and it happened that the 3 of Pushan were also there. Eugene found a strange thing. Zhong Kuei saw the Huang Yun, he was still a bit shy, and his voice was different, and he was pretending to be gentle there. Thinking of my Gusu, a dignified and man, I really can't get used to Zhong Kuei's piety, so tired. After drinking alcohol and leaving the house, Zhong Kuei found that the fat man beside him had noses and eyes not eyes, so he said that Cui Dongshan was willing to return 60% of his family. The fat man immediately bent his knees, grabbed Zhong Kuei's arm with both hands, tears in his eyes, crying and trembling, and shouted, "Brother Zhong Kuei! There is no way to repay such a great kindness, let the little brother be so good." Zhong Kuei shook his wrists and sneered, "Next time there will be a wine bureau, you can drink it with the dog." Fatty's eyes complained, "I'm not afraid to steal the limelight from Brother Zhong at the wine table." Zhong Kuei pushed the fat man's head away. Eugene lowered his voice and asked, "Brother Zhong, are you interested in Huang Yun? It's a coincidence that our brothers have similar eyes. For the sake of brothers, why don't you reluctantly cut love for the sake of brothers? Do you need me to help matchmaking? Dealing with women, especially this is such an extremely brilliant woman, the younger brother is still very talented." Zhong Kuei smiled and said, "What do you want? That is, when I was young, I admired Yi Shanju very much. Of course I like it, but it has nothing to do with the kind of love between men and women." Eugene sighed, "I admire Zhong Kuei's frank and upright gentleman." When he talked about women, Eugene stomped his feet with anger. This Chen Ping'an, should he be the grandest guest of the whole land of flowers? Just think about it again, touch his conscience to speak, this kid is so young and promising, and with such a sense of responsibility, if I were him, walking sideways would be regarded as me. Zhong Kuei walked slowly, looking up at the sky. How many people come to see Mingyue? Who knows that Mingyue sees it? Zhongqiu found Xiao Poxian, Meng Long, and Shiqiu. Zhongqiu came here to convey 2 things. One is Wu Yi in Xiang Mansion within Huang Tinghua. She is very likely to enter Tonggishao in the near future. She is not going to travel, but intends to officially settle in Tonggishao. Wu Yi is willing to take the initiative. Xiao Poxian smiled and looked at the maid beside him. Meng Long's name on the mountain and water genealogy now is Duga Meng Long. She smiled and nodded. Since her son has no objection, of course she is happy to see it happen. After planting autumn, I took out 2 pictures, a picture of the situation in the middle of Tonggishao, and a section of the Rin River. Tell the 3 people that the Rin River will become one of the new major rivers in the future, Xiao Poxian. Staring at the 2 scrolls, thinking for a moment, said, "Our future choices of the 5 sacred mountains may have to be slightly changed. Once the country is established, in addition to the location of the capital, it will also need to enshrine the 5 mountain monarchs, invite the of water to open the mansion, gather the scattered refugees, etc., and these big and small things need to still rely on the many tilts of the Qingping sword sect. People on the mountain, the minister of the dragon." Sure enough, the road number, Dragon Gate, has promised Huang Ting to become a registered worship of Taiping Mountain. So in 2 days, after going down the mountain, he will bring his disciples to talk about Yingzhou, follow Huang Ting and Hushan to enshrine on Negative Mountain, and go to the old site of Taiping Mountain. This immortal has already sent a letter back to Tai Shushan with Feijian, telling the senior sister who is now the abbot of the sect affairs that he is going to stay in Tonggishao for another 1.5 years. For the monks of the upper 5 realms, it takes several years or even decades to go out for a trip, which is very common. In addition, he also used his personal relationship to send a few secret letters to Zhongtu Shenzhou, inviting a few engineers and builders from the mountain who were also from the monster clan, and invited them to visit Tongyi's house. Miyu, Cui Wei, Xiao Mo, and the three Jian Xiu are rare to get together. In addition, there is a Qin Tong who seems to be unfamiliar with anyone in Xiandu Mountain, and is the only one who is more familiar with, but actually doesn't want to be familiar with it. They also called on the two young sword repairmen who had made an exception to participate in the discussion of the Patriarch Hall, Yu Xianhui, Higu. Miyu, who was promoted to be the chief worshipper of Qingping Jianzong, and his direct disciple Higu, the dojo and mansion will be built on the Yunshang peak of Xiandu Mountain. Zhanglu Zuiwei, disciple Yu Xianhui, the dojo is built on the Tianbian peak of Xiandu Mountain with cacti. And these two swordsmen, on the Great Wall of Jianqi in their hometown, have never accepted disciples, so the two children at the moment are both of them. A great disciple of the mountain in the positive sense. As for Xiao Mo's temporary dojo on Qingping Jianzong's side, it was the simplest. There was no one. Just at the foot of Xiandu Mountain, there was a hut on the other side of Baotan, which was considered to be a dojo. A group of people sat by the big brazier. Miyu bent over and stretched out his hands to warm up the fire, raised his head and smiled. You two are not stupid. You know why the hermit sir pulled you over to listen to the discussion, right? Higu was not willing to pay attention to this infamous master in his hometown, not to mention a meaningless and knowing question. He was dull. Yu Xia nodded back and said, I know, because our two destined flying swords can do a little bit of help for the hermit. Anyway, it is equal to swordsmanship and can travel in mountains and rivers. Why not do it? Xiao Mo smiled and said, it's Qingping sword sect. Yu Xia replied, it's nothing different. Cui Wei didn't say anything, it's really no different. That is to say, Qingping Jianzong, otherwise, the difference here would be bigger in another mountain. In the history of Haoran, the next sect leader fell out with the ancestor Master Hall, or had a very stiff relationship. Although it is not too common, it is not an exception. The most exaggerated one was on a big mountain on Lixiaozu. The site was chosen to build the next clan in Jinjiazu. For some reason, he directly announced that he had separated from the previous clan and reported to the world through the Shanshui Mansion report. Although it failed in the end, there was a lot of trouble, and it is still a joke on the mountain. That sect, after this infighting, within a few years, from the next sect master, including the ruler, chief priest, and guest, all changed people, and the upper and lower sects became in harmony with each other. The next sect, which was originally thriving, quickly went downhill. It is not easy to establish a next sect, and it is even more difficult to condense when people's hearts are distracted. Miyu laughed and said, I am not a member of the Patriarch Hall, but I can make an exception to participate in the discussion. Not only in Qingping Jianzong, but also in Luopa Mountain, it is the first thing, so you too can really be proud of it. Higu laughed and glanced at the paralyzed face. Cui Wei twitched the corners of his mouth and smiled rarely. Xiao Mo bowed his head and turned over the rice dumplings on the wire net. They were only delicious when they were roasted golden brown. Qin Tong was in a complicated mood, and he didn't like sword repair, which really made sense. It was just getting bright. At noon today, Yu Guizong would take his own ferry to leave the Qingping sword sect boundary. Lu Jubao and Yu Panshui had already left Mishua Peak last night. Su Hao also greeted Yu Guizong, went down the mountain alone, and took the lead in returning to Yuzhou to drive the mountain crossing. Chen Pingan made a special trip to see off. Today, under the leadership of Bai Xian, he pulled up the millet grains and the others, and came to Qiuji to play together. In fact, Qiuji had already given Bai Xian the address of Jiu Weifeng's receiving sword room yesterday. After the two parties had made an appointment, Fei Jian would often contact him. Of course, Bai Xian had not forgotten to secretly hint that Qiu Zhi had no money in his pocket. I don't have a lot of money on hand. The family property like Jinshan and Yinshan is all placed on the side of Luopa Mountain. Qiu Zhi said that it was all right, and when he returned to Jiuifeng, he hurriedly sent a letter to Monsieur Feng, where he would put a few immortal money in it. Bai Xian patted Qiu Zhi on the shoulder at that time. I'm not very old, and I have a lot of inspiration. I will follow me in the future. We have 2 swords, and we are invincible. Who is not cutting? By the way, at Jiuifeng, if you have someone who is uncomfortable and can't beat you, say hello to me and tell me the general route of the other person's journey down the mountain. Anyway, after a few days, my realm will be swooning. Swish up, when the time comes, I will just go out alone with Master Hermit, stop him on the road, and help you, give that guy to that, huh? Understand? Qiu Zhi heard his scalp numb, and shook his head quickly and said, No, Jiuifeng inside and out is very good to me. He was a little regretful that he had stamped his handprint on that hero book. Today, Qiu Zhi went out alone, and followed by Xian and the others for a stroll around Mishue Peak. The little girl named Chai Wu suddenly asked Qiu Zhi if there was any drink at Jiuifeng. Qiu Zhi said truthfully, Jiuifeng does not produce Xianjia wine, because sect master Wei does not like to drink too much. Chai Wu didn't say anything. Qiu Zhi quickly added one sentence, but the Dikui wine from the Thrush Peak and the several wines from the Yunku Fudi are very famous in our Tonggishao. Chai Wu nodded with bright eyes, saying that if she had a chance to travel abroad in the future, she might go to Jiefeng as a guest. However, the little girl felt that it had been suspended recently, and it would take decades to go down the mountain. Your mountain is really not good. After all, Wang Ji had just entered the ancestor hall of the Yuguazhongshanzong Peak just a few years ago. At that time, Zhang Finggu could only say with a wry smile, probably like the river winding around the land, it will eventually rush to the sea. Wang Ji nodded silently, hoping so. Otherwise, if Yuguazhong and Qingping Jianzhong broke up, the consequences would be disastrous. Tonggishao, my hometown, really can't stand up to this kind of infighting. Cui Dongshan clasped his fists and smiled and said, Mister, if you don't complain, you have to blame me. Intentionally or unconsciously, Chen Pingan walked side by side with Wang Ji and said in his heart, Mr. Qingjie, maybe our Qingping sword sect's actions on this matter are really not so happy and profitable, so it's just a lot of hard work. I hope that we will continue to do so. The two sides can form an alliance, and I will have a good drink with Mr. Qingjie, even if it fails. In Tonggishao, the mountains and rivers are so vast that I will not walk the single-plank bridge. Wang Ji was taken aback, and smiled heartily, that's a good thing. Cui Dongshan smiled. No matter what the husband and the Qingjie said. In the same way, for yourself, it may be useless. But for the husband, it will be believed. How can I find such a gentleman? If it weren't for an outsider, I had to cry to my husband. Cui Dongshan hugged the back of his head with his hands and looked around. In the fairy that he named Qingshan, he would gradually become more and more blooming, with luxuriant vegetation and spring all year round. The former husband, on the way back to his hometown, led a thin horse, followed the water, turned the hillside, the ancient sun-setting road, and 3 or 2 lonely villages beside the road. The mountain is thinner and the water is thinner, and the horse thinner is thinner. The sun and the moon drive the time, and the rivers and lakes move the hearts of the guests. In the spring breeze of the new year, flowers bloom again on Moshang. The next time the husband goes out for a long trip and returns home again, he will definitely not be full of sorrow. Sword of Coming Chapter 963. Long Xinpu stared at the delicate young man with a tiger head hat, could it be that it turned out to be? For a while, I just feel dizzy, the world is spinning, absolutely, for sure, it must not be. You must know that even in the Qingming world, there are countless numbers of worshipping, admiring and fascinating the most proud Taoist official in the world. And Long Xinpu is one of them, not to mention that this Long Master also has a Tao friend, and he sews hundreds of Bai Yes poems on his body. If that guy sees this one in front of him, it is estimated that he will lose his heart on the spot. Long Xinpu quickly took out a jug of wine, raised his head and drank it slowly, slowly. At the moment, the people who came to Jinpu Lake were Sun Daochang, Bai Yi, and Yan Zhua. It's because I've just used to let the two disciples meet the three Pingshui friends of the Spring Society as fate friends. They get along well, and it's hard to get out of the door. I'll talk a few more words because I have more friends on the mountain, just outside the Taoist temple. There are a few more ways to go between the world. Sun Daochang stretched out his hand and waved, and said in amazement, "It's a different kind of beautiful makeup, fragrant and overflowing, and it is tangy. You can almost ashamed the Ruizhu Palace lady ashamed to see people." Yenj was scalp numb. The old Guanju said that the world has no bamboo shoots. The dragon master in front of him had once served as the prime minister, chief assistant, or protector of the country in several countries in Yongzhou. Probably in the last few hundred years, they all resigned in one day, and started the wandering life again. Outside of Bingjie Mountain, more than a dozen large and small dojos have been opened. I heard that the most recent one is on the banks of the Yuanhe River in that Mizhou. Long Xinpu was full of strong Yongzhou local accent, sighing, "There is still a glockenspiel. I have never brought it in Jinzhou today, so I can't play it for you." The two sides talked about each other, and the chicken and the duck talked about it. Feed the fish again. You can't say that, I have both drinks and food. Sun Daochang sneered and said, "This is a job of picking up people's spit, but also to sway the market, pretend to be a ghost, and throw it into another world. A lot of age, not ashamed." Long Xinpu smiled and said, "You can't say that. In a certain place over there, it's a jade realm, how can it be considered as a ghost, and besides, if it weren't for the old master and the Qin Shaodao friend, I wouldn't have to work hard. Take a long trip." Sun Daochang glanced at Long Xinpu. How did he get hurt? It's because he didn't get the name of his sect, and he is going to hang up. Before the soldiers are resolved, do I need help from the poor Dao to protect the Dao? Although Long Xinpu likes to be a monster at the foot of the mountain, his reputation on the mountain is actually good. It can barely be regarded as a good relationship and friends all over the world. If you really want to care about it, it's really rare for a gas trainer to leave Qizhou and take the initiative to find the door. Long Xinpu smiled bitterly, and didn't care about the old-fashioned ridicule. "I blame myself, I can't blame others, it's too big." "Oh. What do you say?" Sun Daochang smiled and asked, "Is it secretly fighting with Dao's second child? Do you consider yourself a Baolin Daoist? Even if you are invincible with the sword, you can stand in the undead again and again." Long Xinpu automatically ignored those strange words of Daochang's son, and asked, "This place is suitable for chatting?" Daochang's son nodded and said, "You can chat casually." Long Xinpu sincerely admired, "Today's old master is really enviable." After that, Long Xinpu didn't hide anything, but the old Guanju deliberately prevented Yan Zhuo from hearing this person's voice. It turned out that the famous dragon master used to follow the clues and went to Runhua Peak to find a hard mountain worship. He has never climbed, nor did he need to climb. As a result, at the foot of the mountain, Long Xinpu, who was fully prepared, only said 4 words. It directly hurts the fundamentals of the road. He vomited a big mouthful of blood on the spot. Like a mess, the threads are tightly wrapped, with different colors, purple, yellow, red, and cyan. It fell directly. Because Long Zinpa's 4-character admonishment is too rebellious. The building will fall. Sun Dao Chang heard the outline and process of Long Zinpa's account, closed his eyes, and quickly returned to his usual look, sneered, "You guys one by one, can you talk about the Grand Master and the demeanor of the predecessors? You can't catch the hard-working person. Just shovel the wool to death, it's not authentic." If it wasn't for the hard-working little friend of Runwa Peak, there would be a more vivid metaphor for the old master. You should be queuing to visit the kiln. Long Xinpu had weird eyes. After all, after Daozu and Lu Qin, the third cultivator to climb Runwa Peak was the old master in front of him. Sun Dao Chang saw through the other party's thoughts at once, and said with no good air, "Pen Dao can be the same as you?" Pang Dao was about to travel far away from home in the past, so he went to Runwa Peak and said goodbye to the hard-working little friend. "Troublesome little friend, my son and grandson Wang Yuanlu, that little devil head, and the latest, Chen Xiaodaoyu. They are all nicknames from Dao Chang's son to the younger generations on the mountain. Just for the sake of Long Zinpa's decline, be kind to him, and say a few words from the bottom of his heart." Dao Chang's son said, "That is to say, Dao ancestor has a lot of aura, otherwise one finger will crush you to death." Among the mountain monks in the Qingming world, there is a resounding saying about this hairpin man, the ancestor of Bingjishan, 3 falls and 2 sores. It's not that you're like Yao Qing, who successfully slashed 3 corpses, and you've gotten a corpse, but that you have fallen 3 times, the first time you fell from an immortal to a Yupu, and then you fell from the ascendant realm twice. In the end, he was re-entered into the ascension realm. No wonder others, if you want to complain, you blame yourself. It's easy to change your temperament. Generally, you don't cause trouble. Every time you cause trouble, it's a big deal. Yupu, immortal, Yupu, immortal, soaring, immortal, soaring, immortal. Sun Dao Chang raised his left hand, breaking his fingers to forget, then raised his right hand. "I can't count with one hand, you deserve to be the Dragon Master of Yongzhou. I fell through the boundary and then fell again, playing around." Long Xinpu suddenly uttered a headless speech. "In the past, I did not bend my waist for 5 buckets of rice, but now you can bow your heads for 6 buckets of rice. You all listen to my unreasonable words. It is the first principle for a person to argue injustice and slander." Sun Dao Chang looked unhappy, and sneered, "I just want to go to the poor Taoist Xuandu temple as a guest. How about arranging you to clean the latrine? Later, when Lu Lao San is here, you can still help and treat the guests." Yan Zhuo was very impressed. When someone else said this, he was just cursing. Sun Dao Chang said it, unexpectedly, "There is no charm." Long Xinpu said for no reason, "Back then, the statue of Wenxing was moved out of the Zhongtu Confucian temple, and I strongly opposed it." It was not without reason that Yan Zhuo suddenly discovered that this guy was scolded by Dao Chang's Sunday. Long Zinpa's words were obviously addressed to the tiger-headed young man. He learned from Dao Chang's son, and took the initiative to show his favor as soon as possible. It's too costly, and time-consuming and labor-intensive may not be pleased. The rise of Bai Yi in this life is unstoppable. It is an established fact that the blind can see. The right time, the place and the people, are all in the body of Sword Xiu Bai Yi. Forget it, just treat this person as really white. Hearing this, Bai also nodded in greeting. It is to help the old scholar to get this love. Sun Dao Chang smiled and said, "You can count as a green onion. I like to travel down the mountain, wander around, not idle a little bit, either spreading sages, or composing nursery rhymes." According to speculations by good people, the prophecies and ballads of the 3 inner states in Yongzhou for the past 2,000 years have been half-spoken. In Sun Dao Chang's words, it was just a fart at someone's door, and the fart sounded like thunder. And that's the case, the wind would blow away, but if you pulled a pile of at the door of someone's door, you would. Get revenge. Dao Chang's son asked, next, are you going to Yongzhou? Zhu Xian, the little girl from the Yufu dynasty, is not afraid of the sky, and has a very good appetite. It is not in vain to help her protect her secretly. Long Xinpu didn't conceal anything, and confessed openly, that is necessary. I have always liked to join in the fun. How can I miss that big gluttony? It is a grand event that has not been encountered in Yongzhou for hundreds of years. Since Dao Fa is not good, it is not comparable to Lu Qin, Gao Gu, and the like, then some personnel cannot be counted by pinching their fingers just by observing from the side. Only by entering the game first and then going ashore can you gain something. I believe that the viewer can't see it anymore. I have run out of time. I just thought about seeing her the last time and opening the door to help. Don't stop me from looking for her. As for whether you can see her inside, just see my own ability is better, so, this request is not too much, right? Not too much is not too much. Then there is no more text. Long Xinpu said helplessly, this is boring, so I'll give you a correct sentence. Dao Chang's son suddenly became puzzled. Pan Dao just can't figure it out. You and Bing Shishan have no hatred with Bai Yujing. Besides, there is a Fuchuan in your mountain. The aptitude is so good, otherwise there would be no such nicknames as Zhang Fenghai No. 2 and Yongzhou Yaoqing. At the beginning, Xian Du Guan had never disputed with you. Otherwise, Fu Quan, this child would already be practicing in Xian Du Guan, you said. What are you stumbling about, with small arms and thin legs? The one who found you today was so poor. One day I was hit by true invincible. I twisted my at random, so I can't be like a grasshopper. The young monk in Bingjishan who deserves the title of genius, named Fuchuan, and the Taoist name Xianchan, is a close disciple of the contemporary Bingjishan mountain master. If it weren't just past the age, with 10 young people and 10 alternates in the world, Fuchuan would definitely have a place. Long Xinpu smiled in his heart. Xingyang Mountain. Dao Chang's son was stunned. What the hell? Long Xinpu said, there is a mountain on Baya Pingzu called Xingyang Mountain, which is a sect that has just entered the sect. Son Dao Chang smiled and said, I really want to go to the Xuandu to see the floor. The poor Dao made you wish. Pin Dao traveled the vast world not long ago. Do you know that a sword immortal like cloud, Xingyang Mountain? Zuantugwen, the peach blossoms are in full bloom. The grandson of the road named King Shan sits under a peach tree with his hands folded and his eyes closed. Taolin sat idle, picking his sword and crossing his knees. The stream and the moon are sparse, and the mountain peaches are as bright as blood. When Long Xinpu saw the girl-like grandson from the same hometown he was thinking of, he was a little shy, and his voice was not loud. Long time no see. The eyebrows are Jumaifing, and the eyes are Zeladu. She is still as beautiful as she was in the past. The beauty of the woman you like is always so touching, so beautiful that the eyes of the sun and the moon can't hold her. Wang's son raised her head to look at the famous Long Master, not to mention being a fellow countryman. She nodded and said in a crisp voice, it seems that it has been a long time. Old people, old acquaintances, reunion are most afraid of the old things that can be talked about, and there is nothing to say with a few polite greetings. Fear when you are afraid, the old things are the old things. Wang's son seemed to feel too insincere to sit and talk, but as soon as she was about to get up, Long Xinpu sat on the ground, gently tossed a few petals of peach blossoms by his feet, and asked softly, Daoist Kongshan, I can't drink? Wang's son smiled and said, what is the problem? Long Xinpu took out a pocket jug made of green glaze, only the size of a fist, and took a sip of the drink with his head up. When I first saw her, she passed me slowly, and the barren land was full of flowers. The miserable green boy traveled all over the spring, and Luo Qi was full of flowers, which seemed to be the most favored, the most prince and grandson, or the king. Son, just Wang Sunday. I met Ching Chu at the age of 9 and met Ching Shiwu in his 90s. The boy rode a bamboo horse and turned around the pascflower. There are 1,000 words, but I don't know where to start. After a long silence, Long Xinpu just laughed at himself. I have a bad aptitude. You look down on it. It's normal. Wang's son frowned slightly and said, it's not such a thing at all. Long Xinpu courageously retorted, in fact, that's how it is. Just imagine, if I had that truly invincible swordsmanship, or the Taoism taught by Zhang Zhang, would you not look at it more and listen more patiently? What about me? Wang's son thought for a while. It seems that this is really the case. But in fact, Master Long knew very well that it was not such a thing at all. My own realm is high, and my fame is big. It's nothing more than letting Wang's son look at and listen to a few more sentences. After all, it has nothing to do with liking. The reason why he was so noisy is that he wanted to say a few more words to her, so as not to be cold and speechless. Stunned. If it's just embarrassment, it doesn't matter, for fear that she will feel embarrassed and have nothing to say, just a polite sentence or two, and then she turns around and leaves. The unrequited love in the world seems to be so worthless. But if it is valuable, why bother with love? Long Xinpu cautiously said, persuade Bai Yi to take the role of Du Talk or the Lord of the Palace. I can try and see if it can help you. It is best if you are busy. If you can't help, you have nothing to lose. Wang's son seemed to be slightly surprised. She nodded and said without hesitation, whether it is successful or not, thank you first year. Long Xinpu fell silent, and the act of looking for words without words was actually not easy. Wang's son said, it's an amazing thing to enter the Ascendant Realm twice. Long Xinpu laughed at himself, it's okay. Wang's son raised his brow. Long Xinpu immediately changed his words, it's really good. Regarding the newly released list of the 10 people in the world, Long Xinpu hesitated to say something, worried. He was the ancestor of this business, and knew best about the doorways and dangers hidden here. If it hadn't been for this inexplicable list that spread the world, Long Xinpu would actually not come to Xuandugwen to see Wang Sunday. The newest 10 people in the Qingming world. 11 people to be exact. Yu Dou, Lu Xin, Bixiao Dongzhu, Wu Zhou, Sun Huaizhong, Lin Zhangxian, Wu Shuangjiang, Gao Gu, Yao Qing, Wang Sun, hard work. In fact, in the world before this, no matter how good people give their lists in their minds, 10 people are 10 people. This is because the last time the young and alternate 10 people in the world made a start, and the list of 10 people happened to be 11. It seems that this has formed a tradition. Long Xinpu smiled dryly, and said, Father Kongshan Taoist, there were 10 people that day. Wang's son said bluntly, according to the level of Taoism and the level of lethality, I shouldn't be among the 10 people, at most I will be thrown into the waiting list behind. Long Xinpu sighed heavily. There are a huge number of alternate candidates, a full 21 people. Except for the headed monk Jiang Xiu, an unknown person, he is clearly defined as the 11th in the world, and the remaining 20 people are ranked regardless of high or low. There is indeed no way to distinguish these great monks and martial arts masters. Maybe many people have never met each other, and many mountain monks, in the last 1,000 or hundreds of years, have not done anything at all, and have never discussed Taoism or swordsmanship with anyone. On the 12th floor of Baiyujing 5th City, there are 3 Taoist officials waiting on the list. The first Deputy City Lord of Nanhua City, Zi Suyuanjun, Mrs. Wei. This woman's crown, by Huangting one of the Qingming world, is jointly revered as the first generation of ancestors. Mrs. Wei received a lot of disciples. Among them was a direct disciple who was in charge of 100 flowers in the world. The owner of Ziki Lu, Jiang Zhaomo. The lord of the Jinhua Palace in the Biyun building, the old man is named Huang Jieshou, the road number is Weiying, and the name is Xianhuang. In addition to sitting in the Yansha cave of Jinhua Palace, he is also responsible for the high-ranking piece. Armor. There is a library of books, called Do Not Teach a Day to Spend a Day. The old Taoist priest hangs a string of keys weighing several kilograms all the year round. It is said that the reason why he called himself Xianhuang is because Taoist ancestors personally gave the word Xian, which is probably also a kind of plaque for the library building. Deus's performance in placing high hopes on Huang Jieshou. The predecessor and the current host of Biyun Tower are the disciples and redisciples of the old real person, because Huang Jieshou and Lingbao city lord, Pang Ding, with the Taoist name Modest, are people of similar age. According to the mountain's algorithm, the Jiazi or the 100-year-old generation is considered to be the same year of the mountain Qi practitioners. In addition, there is the saying that the 1,000-year-old generation is a senior generation. Huang Jieshou and Pang Ding, these two peer veteran Taoists, actually have a longer period of cultivation than the two head teachers of Bai Yujing, Yu Dou, and Lu Qin. If it only talks about age, not about identity, except for the name of the great master teacher, the rest of the heavenly immortal Taoists are their juniors on the mountain. If you add to the Ascension Realm sword repairman who is now practicing in the Baiyujing Shinshao city, Haosu, the last criminal officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, then Baiyujing would have 4 candidates. In the Qingshan dynasty of Bingzhou, the national teacher Bai O, the end martial artist, the third person in the world of martial arts. The first person on the mountain in Ruzhou, Mr. Zhu. The latest road number LV Ping. The 11th in the world, which used to be firmly established in the past, is now taken over by Jiang Shou, who was born out of nowhere. In Yanzhou, a loose swordsman named Niabixia, who has been in the clouds and water for 3,000 years, has been wandering around and has been missing for a long time. However, it is rumored that her natal lamp placed in the Huayang Palace in Daifishan has never been seen for thousands of years. Extinguished, there have always been divergent opinions about the whereabouts of Niabixia. Some say that she has actually gone to practice swords outside the sky, some say that she may be outside the sky, using the outside world to strengthen the sword, and even said that she went to the Western Buddhist country. Zhuzhou, the master of the Qingxi Palace, the master of the contemporary palace master, Yuan Huanxian, the Taoist name is Nanyang Fish, is proficient in the Tao of Fulu, and has created several large symbols, nicknamed the literary poet, but the most famous Tao No, but somehow the 100 killers spread around. It is rumored that Yuan Huanxian was responsible for the cultural fate of the 2 states, and he is very hopeful that he will be among the 14th realms. Baolin Sen Xiu, she is also a female sword repairer in the Ascension realm. In the past selections, there were those who greeted the Xianzhang faction in advance, and took the initiative to ask not to be included in the rankings, so as not to be burdened by fame, provoke unnecessary friendships or exchanges of Taoism for no reason. Of course there will also be mountain monks who have made a name for themselves, or because of some self-interest considerations, they must sharpen their heads to fight for a place. The latter are mostly dynasty emperors, or some Taoist temples that are at the bottom of the top sections. Master Zong Menzu. One is to attract talents and heroes from various states, and the other is to be able to absorb more immortal materials from outside the mountains and cultivate the embryos of Taoism. But this time, it's not the handwriting of the fairy stick faction. How can you say hello? Many people who might not want to be on the list at all have been on the list, and many who want to be on the list can't find the temple with a pig's head. On the top of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Lu Qin and Xiao Imo hit it off as soon as they met, and they talked about the Qingming world. At that time, Master Lu casually mentioned the names of more than a dozen masters, and most of the strange men and strangers who were mentioned in the end. Comment. From this it can be seen that Zhang Jiaolu often stood on top of the railing at the highest point of Baiyujing, either basking in the sun or admiring the moonlight. The customs of the world are indeed not in vain. 21 people headed by Jiang Xiu. All of these people are only on the waiting list. It happened that Xuandu Guan Wang Sun was placed on the top 10 list. It also happens to be the 10th place in the world, tied for the 2. Wouldn't it work to put Wang's son on the 11th? Sure. Even in Long Xinpa's eyes, as long as Wang's son did not enter the 14th realm in one day, she would be one of the candidates at most, and there was no way to compete with Jiang Xiu for the 11th. Others don't know Jiang Xiu's details in swordsmanship, but Long Xinpu knows it well. This is tantamount to deliberately roasting Xian Du Temple on the fire. Within one case, there are 2 top 10 in the world. Except for Baiyujing, there has never been a feat in the history of Qingming. The Qi Xian Du Temple is notoriously different from Baiyujing. The Xian Du Temple is not the same as Daifishan Huayang Palace. The latter has at least had that kind of hatred and can still maintain face with Baiyujing. It's okay, but because of Sun Daochang, it is recognized by the world that they dare to openly break the top spot with Baiyujing, and then sway Qugong and Wu Shuangjiang. If it were the handwriting of the Xianzhong faction, Long Xinpu would definitely not let Wang's son on the list, and even the alternate would be useless. After all, Bing Jishan and the Xianzhong faction were old neighbors in the same territory of Yongzhou, and Long Xinpu was a soldier again. The monk with the highest generation of Shishan, and several old ancestors of the Xianzhong sect, are very familiar with each other and have a personal friendship. The reason why Xian Duguan had forged a death feud with Baiyujing was precisely because he was fighting with the head teacher Yu, because he had the Haven's hatred. It lies in the pair of masters and apprentices of Xian Duguan, Huang Gan, and Song Maolu. This pair of masters and disciples, one is named Qingli, and the other is respected as Master of Song. But when the former was still alive, he didn't even enter as an alternate. Song Maolu was a candidate for the review. The reason why the Song Master of Yongzhou's Master of the Nations was not ranked high and failed to rank among the top 10 people in the world. It is said that he was a fairy stick. The sender did it deliberately so as not to attract the wind. But even so, in the end there was the tragic Yongzhou. In the battle of closing the position, since then, there has been an extra line of rice thieves scattered around the world. And that Huang Gan, as the younger brother of her and the old Guanzhu, died in Yudo's hands, and Huang Gan still died in the Zuandugwan. So before going to Yongzhou, Long Xinpu planned to take a detour to go home and take a trip to Xianzhongpai. It is to select a more convincing 10 people in the world. Simply put, in addition to being persuasive, you also need to have a bigger gimmick that can attract more eyes and topics, and cover the influence of the previous list. With Wang Sun's temperament, even if she is the 10th under heaven, she would never give it up. Even if he knew the murderous intent of this essay, Wang's son would only accept it calmly, nothing more than a sword. To say that through letting Xuandu Guan's Dibao say some vague remarks, he is like an angry little wife, and it is a big joke. Both guilty and futile. It is easy to explain more and more suspicious sinuses, which will only backfire. And this is definitely not in line with the consistent style of Taoist priests in Xuandu. Wang's son said, "It's okay. When I reach the 14th level, people who watched jokes won't be able to laugh." Long Xinpu said miserably, "I hope you don't enter the 14th realm." Wang's son is rare to be silent, and he needs to formulate his words there, change my personal preference. Long Xinpu drank the wine in the pot and smiled freely. It's harder than getting Wang's son to like me." Wang's son was silent. Long Xinpu raised his head and whispered softly, "It's going to snow again. This heavy snow will be very heavy." If he put aside his selfishness, the picture of the mountains and rivers that has been slowly laid out on display would surely be spectacular. Long Shinpu got up to leave, walked slowly out of the peach forest, keeping the wind and mountains and rivers away, just leaving the peach forest step by step, slowly leaving the field of vision of the woman behind him. Sun Daochang came to the senior sister and looked at Long Shinpu, who had left sadly. Outsiders could not say anything about this kind of thing. Wang Sun suddenly said, "If Song Maolu was born in the awe-inspiring world, would it be better?" Daochang's son nodded, yes. After hesitating for a moment, Daochang's son said slightly bitterly, "If this kid had gone to Bai Yujing early in the morning, maybe he would be a veritable master song teacher now." Wang Sun said, "The truth can't be said like that. I believe that Song Maolu may resent Xuantuguan, you, and me. But he will not regret the matter of practicing in Xuantuguan." Sun Daochang hummed, "Obviously, there is no doubt about it." Wang Sun said, "Since we know he doesn't regret it, those of us who are elders must feel more guilty." Daochang's son said, "You can't slap yourself every day." Wang Sun said, "You can stretch out your face. I have 2 hands. How difficult is it to free one?" Sun Daochang laughed blankly. Sister still has such thoughts. The close disciple of junior brother Huanggan and his nephew Song Maolu. The fragrance blooms outside the wall. In Yongzhou, which is not bordering Qizhou, stand on its own. The prosperous Tao pulse and the great momentum are worthy of the 4 words, unprecedented and unparalleled. Just because of the ups and downs of Yongzhou's unwinding battle, Xuanduguan, for some reason, chose to stand idly by. It is said that Sun Huaizhong personally issued a decree that no one can leave Taoist temple and rush to Yongzhou to help Song Maolu. Therefore, the direct disciples of Song Maolu died of death and escaped. In the end, there were only a few people left. They were displaced, resembling a bereaved dog, and scattered in several states outside Yongzhou and Qizhou. It was difficult to gain a firm foothold, and pass down a few lines of Taoism with withered incense for the line of Shizu Huanggan and Shizuan Song Maolu. And these few Dao vain monks who are difficult to be climate, hate Xuantuguan, the least bit is no less than Bai Yujing. The older the Taoist officials, especially the elderly who have experienced that battle, the more difficult it is to let go of Xiandu Temple. One Yongzhou, one state and all countries, without exception, respect the country's teachers. Although Song Maolu did not have the name of cultivating the ancestors, it has the fact that it is the leader of the religion. This is a feat that can be described as unprecedented. Similar to Lin Zhongxian, who was respected as the Master of the Forest, Song Maolu was also called Master of the Song by the mountain instead of his Taoist name. Song Maolu and Bai Yujing's Zhang Haifeng, who was nicknamed the Little Head Teacher, were once known as the Double Bai in the world. In the eyes of the outside world, the Daoist of Yongzhou is a glorious defeat. As the head teacher of Song Maolu, he is still honorable even though he is dead. Song Maolu would rather die than survive, and was detained in the Yanxia cave of Zhenyue Palace in Bai Yujing. It is said that Song Maolu once said that poor Dao really wants to go to Bai Yujing, neither as a guest nor as a prisoner, so he can only ask you about the sword. The reason why Sun Huaizhong took the initiative to go to the Qingshan dynasty to find Wang Yuanlu, who was born in the line of rice thief, the old Guanzhu also joked at that time that he was the ancestor of Wang Yuanlu, but in a certain sense, it was really complete. It's a joke. It's just that the line of the rice thief today is actually quite different from the Yongzhou Taoist priests back then. Most of them fished in troubled waters, and they were secretive. In addition, this is a taboo for Bai Yujing, and it is not recorded in Taoist temples and official history books. Over the years, the young Taoist priests of the rice thief line do not know their own Dharma line at all. Obviously they practice the Taoist orthodoxy. Why is it a rice thief? History is a forgetful old man, so history books are thin. Therefore, according to legend, there is an unwritten rule of the Zushitang in Xuandu Temple, which is only passed down from generation to generation, and will not be recorded in the book. Do not fight back or curse, do not fight back, no matter if you have beaten or failed, don't do it anyway. It can be considered a unique strange thing. Xuanta watched Sun Huaizhong, dared to scold Bai Yujing, and dared to scold the people of the world. Only the dozens of temples in these Taoist veins, even if it is a Taoist boy who has just started, dare and will scold Sun Huaizhong. And Bing Jishan, as the only top-notch group that made an open alliance with Sung Maolu in the past, although it seems to have been reminded by Sung Maolu in advance that it unilaterally tore the covenant temporarily, Bing Jishan was not badly injured, but Bing Jishan except outside of Long Xinpu, the perceptions of Sun Daochang and Xian Du Guan are all your Sun Guan has been practicing Taoism for thousands of years, and his swordsmanship has mastered the spirit. What else did you do besides cursing Bai Yujing without pain or itching? What do you dare to do? Dao Chang's son said, Senior sister, let's forget about that matter. Seeing that the elder sister did not speak, Dao Chang's son continued, the younger brother is the younger brother. On my side, Zhan Qing and Di Yuanfeng, plus the two on your side, are all separate people. I believe the younger brother, I don't want us to spend so much time and effort. If the senior sister hadn't forgotten, at the beginning, some of our fellow students had discussed this matter specially. Only the young junior brother's thoughts were the most special on the furthest distance from our opinions. Wang's son leaned back against a peach tree, arms around his chest, raised his head slightly, and stared at Sun Huaizhong in a daze. It seems to be saying that the old lady has worked so hard for more than 1,000 years, and things are about to come, you tell me forget it? Xiao Sun, are you going to be beaten or are you looking for a beating? This is different from in a latrine, and you don't need toilet paper to wipe your butt. Just thinking about it, Wang's son felt very sorry for the younger brother. Sun Huaizhong bit his head and said, Sister, listen to me. Wang's son remained silent. Sun Huaizhong sighed, Senior sister, what we do may make the younger brother even more unwilling, unworthy, and unhappy. Wang's son retracted his gaze and hummed softly. Now it was Sun Huai's turn to be unsure, and he asked cautiously, Senior sister can really let it go? It's nothing. Wang's son murmured, it was just that I suddenly found out that I almost can't remember the appearance of yellow oranges. I am a little sad. It was just such a sentence that made the old Guanju immediately turn his head and dare not look at the senior sister again. Wang's son waved his hand, don't disturb my practice and go cool. The old master nodded silently and came to a study that hadn't had a master for many years. In the study, there is a pair of couplets, which are written by the younger brother. Pipa, yellow oranges, green plums, and lone cranes rushed to the southern sky, doing what they were supposed to do in the eternal class. The Pinglai Ingzhou square pot, Xianzhen rides the wind-down Beishan, to be an indispensable person in the world. Old storytellers and storytellers are no longer young, let alone those in the books. Old Guanju picked up the broom and dustpan over the corner, and began to clean the spotless study. After closing the door, Lao Guanju went to the hut on Bai Ye's side. He was not polite to Bai Yi, and even cooked himself a pot of eggs. Old Guanju picked up a hard-boiled egg, Bai also shook his head. Old Guanju took the egg and knocked it on the table, swallowing it whole mouthfuls, and smiled vaguely. The younger brother reads the most, and he has read a lot of Buddhist scriptures. Maybe he has read all the Buddhist books in the Qingming world. Of course, this has nothing to do with the number of Buddhist classics here. The old View master picked up a hard-boiled egg again and smiled, break the ignorant shell, worry about the river, and relieve all birth, old age, sickness, death, sorrow and distress. Bai just sat across the table. After eating 3 hard-boiled eggs, the old master clapped his hands. The old man looked indifferent, paused for a moment, and continued, but if it's inevitable, it can only be this way. Bai also said, since I have thought so much, I still want to do so much. The old Taoist smiled knowingly, nodded and said, it makes sense. Do what you should do in the eternal class, and be an indispensable person in the world. Sword of Coming Chapter 964. The book says that there is no permanent banquet in the world, but don't be afraid, the book also says, wherein life does not meet. Note 1. The guests were leaving Mishua Peak one after another, and the group with the largest number of people, mighty and mighty, took the Tongyin ferry that was just won by Qingping Jianzong and was heading to Taiping Mountain. In addition to Huang Ting, the new mountain lord who has no suspense in Taiping Mountain, there is also a guardian enshrined in Negative Mountain. Because Zhang Shanfeng wants to continue to travel to Tonggishao, he can go with Li Baoping, who is planning to go to drive the mountain to sea. Pei Qian will be with Sister Aquarius. They are all carrying bamboo boxes and holding green bamboo sticks. In the attire for a long journey, I plan to go to Taiping Mountain first, and then to visit Pushanyunkatang. In this way, Yi Yunyun simply asked Tan Rong and Shui Huai to return to the mountain gate first, and she also had to visit the old Taiping Mountain site. As a result, Zhong Kuei He Eugene will also follow. When Zhong Kuei was a gentleman of Dafu Academy, he was very familiar with Taiping Mountain. As for that fat man, he had a legitimate reason to be a flower protector. Yuan Lingdian looked at this posture, this battle. Junior brother does not need to protect the way by himself at all. Yuan Lingdian left Tonggishao first, but instead of returning to Padi Peak, he went straight to the sea and went to the barren world through Guishu to find Master Hulong. The Tongyin ferry slowly lifted into the sky, and after passing through the sea of clouds, it swam far away suddenly, like a blue bird. Dressed in a green shirt, walking on King Shandu, discussing with the white-clothed teenager with a red mole on his eyebrows about the future store setting of the ferry, discussing whether to take the initiative to say hello to the patriarch of the world's Baozhai, come here to settle down. Next to them was a little girl in black, holding a green bamboo stick, carrying a golden pole on her shoulder, leaning against a cotton bag, and today she carried a new, verdant bookcase. Chen Pingan originally planned to accompany Li Baoping and Pei Qian to Taiping Mountain, but just received a secret letter from a Confucian sage sitting in the sky. This made Chen Pingan have to return to Luopa Mountain immediately. You have to call Xiaomo together. As for the Fengyuan ferry that is still docked at King Shandu for the time being, next time you travel south, in addition to the southernmost Yuzhou Kashandu, there will be an extra Xianjia ferry that stops at the Baichengdu near the Yuguazang Mountain Gate. After all, Huanggeji and Yangtze in Yunkus blessed land, according to the agreement, the income of the next 500 years will fall into the pocket of Qingping Jianzong's account. How can you only hang around at the door of your house with your bookcase on your back? Look at the leader of the martial arts and the leader of the rudder. The shoulders of the millet grain swayed, small officials, small courage, big mouth, can't swim far away, swim near and near. Cui Dongshan originally wanted to talk, and wanted to make fun of a few words, but ended up being slapped by his husband. Cui Dongshan suddenly rubbed his hands and said with embarrassment, maybe I have to borrow 2 people from my husband and the last. Chen Pingan turned his head and smiled and asked, how many? I didn't hear clearly. Say it again, 20. Cui Dongshan said with a dry smile, how can it be, now there are only a few members of the genealogy of Luopa Mountain, 20, which is too much. Last time the Lupo Mountain established the sect celebration, there were 43 members of the Patriarch Hall of the Patriarch of Jai's Peak. Among them, Du Wenxi and Pang Lanxi of Pima Zong from Luzhou in Beiju. And the 2 children, Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting, have now escaped from the Ji Sifeng genealogy and traveled far beyond the other continents with the old sword repairing Yu. As a result, Cui Dongshan directly poached 12 of them in one go. If you don't talk about the number of people, just talk about this ratio, It is indeed unusual in the entire history of Howren. Chen Pingon kicked over, and the big white goose immediately jumped sideways. Chen Ping An's face was dark and sneered. Let's talk about them first. Cui Dongshan cautiously said, Hongxia, Yunzi. Chen Pingon smiled and said, do you want the old cook? Cui Dongshan said in embarrassment, if there is, of course it is the best. As soon as Chen Pingon raised his foot, Cui Dongshan hurried to the side of the millet. Xiao Mili scratched his face and reminded, brother, it's okay, it's not difficult to borrow or repay. But you can't pretend to be a grandson when borrowing money from someone, and be called to collect debts, as the old cook said. He immediately became an ancestor. Cui Dongshan sternly said, the old cook is still humorous. Chen Pingon said, I will take Shema back to Luopa Mountain soon, and the millet grains will stay here first, and next time I will go home with Fengyuan Ferry. The millet grain green bamboo stick tapped the ground, nodded and said, telling. After that, Chen Pingon went to Luobayan to find Xiaomo, and then at the gate of Qingpingfang Mountain, he saw the couplet, and a group of people stepped across the archway building and climbed up the stairs, planning to take a trip to the place placed in Mixufang. Changchundongtian, where Chen Pingan's short-lived dojo was once done, such a formal retreat, though a walking pavilion, in the Great Wall of Sword Chi prison is the first time in the world. What Tianwan took in her hand was enough to support a monk's proving to ascend. That is, everyone is becoming more and more mediocre, slow step by step, lack of stamina, and the gap is widened by geniuses of the same age. The reason why many second- and third-rate mountain immortal mansions can be promoted to the sect of Zongzi Head is that, besides the ancestor of ZTE, who opened the sect, who has excellent aptitude, it is often that the entire mountain is not hesitate to spend the whole mountain. Full effort. This statement is not an exaggeration at all. Chen Pingon said, in addition to King Sun Chun and Bai Xian, in addition to Qing Chaolu, He Gu, and Yu Xianhui, they have all moved to this place recently to practice. They only waited until they encountered a pass, then exited the cave and asked their masters for inquiries. The crux of the bottleneck in sword practice. Cui Dongshan asked, Mr. is deliberately pursuing a kind of equality. Do you want Qingping Jianzong to be in the same line as Luopashan? Chen Pingon shook his head, no, it's just a kind of appearance of the result looks like this. Luopa Mountain is Luopa Mountain, Qingping Sword Sect is Qingping Sword Sect. Build. Qingping Jianzong wants to make Chai Wu, who is now a sword repairman, break through the boundary as soon as possible, while ensuring that there are no hidden dangers in the avenue, and let the children from the Great Wall of Jinqi, Bai Xian and Sun Chun, forcefully force speaking of breath, I know where and how big the gap is with the real genius. Jian Xiao has a crux. Maybe he is not afraid of death. But he is afraid of losing. I just want to see, after they feel that they are destined to lose to Chai Wu, they may not even be able to catch up with Chai Wu in their lives, what will happen to their respective Dao Axin. In addition, once the little girl, Chai Wu, occupies Changchundongtian alone, she breaks through the realm very quickly, first in the Yupu realm, then in the fairy realm, and even in the future ascending realm. She may become more and more lonely and uncomfortable. Bai Xian and the others are no matter how big they are, but if they don't see each other for a few days, it's as if they suddenly see Chai Wu in the upper 5 realms. Maybe in a few years, they will be another stranger, Chai Wu, who are all too young. The aptitude is too good, so I am worried that Chai Wu will drink more and more alone in the future. Even if we are together, there is nothing to talk about. For a long time, he will be farther and farther away from his former friends. This kind of distance on the path of heart is not if you find a chance to get close to the courtesy, you can make up for it, but you can't. Cui Dongshan nodded and said, Mr. is right. Cultivation of the heart is a long-term practice. Only with a clear Taoist heart and a pure sword heart can sword repair be possible. Chen Pingon turned his head and looked at Cui Dongshan. I used to teach Pei Qian on the second floor of the bamboo building, and then it was rare to volunteer to be a temporary preacher for Chai Wu, but on the side of the student Chao Qingyang, a flying sword mud pill. After placing Chai Wu in place, Chen Pingon climbed to the highest point of the cave and asked, Dongshan, your big disciple, has someone already chosen it? Cui Dongshan's eyes turned sharply. Chen Pingon said, I heard Lin Shi say that before you were near Dadu, there was a simple and honest young man by your side. You called him Brother Gao. Cui Dongshan stomped his feet, had to lift up his sleeves, shake vigorously, and threw out a dull boy with red lips and white teeth. Cui Dongshan scowled and said, High and low, what are you doing in a daze? Hurry up and call Master Patriarch. The young man named High and Low by Cui Dongshan had a timid expression and called out Master Patriarch. Chen Pingon was speechless, and took Xiao Mo and Xiao Mi down the mountain. Cui Dongshan took the young man with the nickname Failed and hurried to catch up with her husband, and asked in his heart, Mr. Tong Yizhou, what about sacrificing the sword in the future? Chen Pingon said, You are the sect master of Qingping Sword Sect. You can figure it out by yourself. Cui Dongshan let out a cry and asked, Mister, are you going back to Luopa Mountain? Chen Pingon said, Go to the Earth Temple to worship incense before leaving. Cui Dongshan suddenly said, It's the guide agency, the temple is not big, but it has a long history, more than 1,000 years, and the incense has not been broken. It is very rare under the mountain. I will be with my husband. A group of people worshipped incense at the guide agency. The temple of the land is very small, and the temple is only for local people. Chen Pingon also invited a pair of incense candles. After leaving the guide, Cui Dongshan took the millet grains and the disciples of Kaishan, and said goodbye to his husband and Xiaomo. Chen Pingon did not rush back north, but took Xiaomo for a walk. There were many persimmon trees near the temple of the land. A little further away was a large swath of reeds, with egrets flying by like persuasive words, persuading people and staying, and staying. If you want to come to this year's autumn, full of red persimmon trees, if there is a sunset, it will be a beautiful picture just like a narcissus wearing a light red shirt. Xiao Mo asked curiously, My son, why are you so anxious to return to Luopa Mountain? Hospitable. Chen Pingon looked weird, there is a guest from afar. Xiao Mo smiled and said, Is the one who came. Chen Pingon shook his head and said, That won't be true. The other party has to behave well, otherwise the price will be too great. Xiao Mo asked, Is it a 14th level cultivator, or an ascension level sword repairer? Chen Pingon patted Xiao Mo on the shoulder, and said solemnly, Im wronged you. Xiao Mo was confused and had already begun to think that he really wanted to ask the sword. He must stay away from Luopa Mountain, and it is best to leave the land of Aquarius Island and go to the sea. Together with Bai Jing, they met together to swim far down the river and land boundary, and they could be regarded as the master Bai Zhe who returned to the wilderness together visiting. As a result, the rebellion failed, and Bai Zhe was beaten. Of course, this had something to do with Bai Jing's defiance, not small, but not too big. If Bai Zhe really wanted to clean up their group of fierce big monsters who had been extremely rebellious in the ancient years, it really had nothing to do with the number of each other. Previously, Bai Zhe ordered all the hibernating people scattered in various places to wake up. The girl looking Bai Jing now named herself Xia Go. After all, she is a woman. It is a matter of taking a new name and changing the road number, such as changing clothes. In addition, Xiao Mo, who had been recovering from a round of bright moon and bright color, somehow ran to Howren World. She and Xiao Mo, both of them are ascendant sword repairmen, one is the pinnacle and the other is consummation. In fact, they are only half a step away. In addition, there was a glamorous woman with pale face and scarlet lips. She was thinly dressed and plump, but her eyes were cold and she kept away from people thousands of miles away. Now the pseudonym is Guan Yi, and the road name is Shuezong. She woke up from the Wanyan Glacier before, and killed all the creatures in the entire nearby huge city. Among them was an upper 5-level demon clan and several earth fairy monks, who could be promoted to the barbaric level against this strength. The ancient great demon on the throne had no strength to fight back, even unable to see her appearance clearly, and died. The monk's soul, with his soul and blood, all became the food of the official second. And when she came, she found a small country, including the capital, to have a good meal. Guan Yi noticed that Bai Jing was moving closer to him, and then the other party suddenly reached out to touch his chest, and Guan Yi had to gently pat off the opponent's palm. The girl with the mink hat sighed, "Well, it's tiring." "Really, Guan Yi, you have to listen to my persuasion. If you hinder the fight, it's better to be small, otherwise it will be messy when you fight, and it won't look good." Guan Yi smiled and said nothing. She has become accustomed to traveling with companions along the way. Standing next to Guan Yi was a young monk who always squinted and smiled, with a pseudonym Hutu. After being awakened by Bai Ze's imperial order, the mountain that belonged to his line was intermittent with incense, and it was hard to maintain the sect of the Dao line. As a result, there was a frenzied mountain founder, and he waited until he painted an ancient painting from the ancestor hall. Walking out of the portraits of the mountains and rivers on the battlefield, there is one family Dao line, one sect, and in the end only a few cultivators of the lower 5 realms are left. The rest are all killed by him. The entire patriarch hall is now except for him. This old patriarch is already empty. The owners of more than a dozen chairs, because they were confused and respect the wrong incense, have all become the womb of the old patriarch. A boy with a heavy pupil, alias Ligua, and his Dao name, Flying Money. In one hurried effort, he took back the 8 treasures of the mountain with the rank of immortal soldiers. You must know that these fairy soldiers who were left in the wild in the past tens of thousands of years have been cultivated by various ancestors and upper 5 realms, and they have been refined into their own life. Therefore, as soon as this young appeared, all the fairy soldiers returned to their original owners, and instantly it was equivalent to severely injuring 7 wild demon races in the upper 5 realms, plus a young earth fairy who was famous in the wild world, and was regarded as a great road. It can be expected that the genius of Taoism, just because he can't bear the forced separation of his destiny, can be said to have suffered a catastrophic disaster, no arrogance, and a lot of falls. It is destined to be hopeless in this life. The ancient great demon in the appearance of a young man, with a yellow universe bag and a gourd for catching a demon on his waist. The sun and the moon grind through the ages, and the universe is sent to one house. Once refining 2 human monks who are both ascending realms. An old Taoist man with a bamboo crown, riding a deer with a sword on his back. The pseudonym is funny, it turned out to be the Wang Youwu, but the Taoist name is not bad, Shan Jun. There is also an old woman surrounded by clouds and fog, her body is rickety, and she is always gathering the heaven and the earth to make aura. Under the close look of the big monk, the short old woman, the weather is as majestic as a mountain, the mountains are divided into 5 colors, and there are countless golden thunders all over. Hilltop. There is also a small and slender man who seems to have not woken up yet, and has been yawning. In addition to being a great cultivator of the Ascension realm, he is also a pure martial artist, and he has reached the highest level. The relationship with Liku is very good. In the ancient years, the 2 parties often traveled the world together. The Taoist and scholar, who were personally killed by this man, were thrown into the bag of Liku's universe. Bai Jing has only 3 regrets in this life, one of which is not being able to concurrently study martial arts. The second thing is that you can't read the book. As for the 3rd regret, Bai Jing rubbed the mink hat on his head. Hee, it's embarrassing. Except for Xiaomo's absence, Bai Jing, Guan Yi, Li Gu, Hu Tu, and Wang Youwu were standing in front of Bai Zai. And the guy who has never had a pseudonym, and may not even have the real name of the Yaozu. So Bai Jing helped him choose a name that was not a name, anonymous. Bai Zai looked towards Li Gu and said, "There is a female crowned Sanxian with the name of Taiyin, in the Qingming world, named Wuzhou, who is on the same path as you, but she has already taken the lead to enter the 14th realm." This ancient great demon with a heavy pupil just nodded stupidly, without seeing the slightest ripples in his heart. The Ascension Realm perfect cultivator, who wants to be among the 14 realms, is afraid that there is already a predecessor on the single plank bridge. Generally speaking, when encountering this kind of heavenly mote, it can only be Wei Shi of Ai Aizhou, because there is no other way out, and his will is depressed. Otherwise, it's like Lu Qi, and still has the ambition to ask for another way, looking for the secrets on the marriage book, and for this reason, he will cross the two worlds. Xiago glanced at the young man diagonally, and she uttered a series of tuts, gloating, her miserable. Xiago said more and more vigorously, "I can't blame others, who made you eat and hold on back then. You have to compete with that scholar, otherwise there is nothing wrong with that Taoist ant. You are already 14th stage, I saw you on the road. You have to go around." The scholar who had fought with Li Gu, he was the proud student of the Most Holy Master, and he could even be said to be the most favorite of the Most Holy Master. There was none of them. How could this person's fighting ability be lowered? It can't be said that Li Gu has lost too much. If you lose, you will definitely lose. However, in the end, both losers are hurt, and both sides failed to enter the 14th realm, especially Li Gu. Back then, in a small poking monster race monk, his qualifications it is the most top-notch. The key is that this guy has a bright mind and has many valuable treasures on him. No matter how you look at it, he is very likely to go further. You can stand side by side with Tuo Yuashandazu and Bai Zai on the top of the world. The teenager also squinted Bai Jing. Xiago blinked, "Huh. Don't be small, let's give you another chance to speak well." This Li Gu liked reading so much that he had the nickname, Silverfish Book Eater. It is said that he had an idea to create a dojo where Book City never sleeps. Therefore, under the 3 robes of the boy with a heavy pupil, are covered with tattoos. In the ancient years, Li Gu even became a half-hearted scholar for a while, but somehow, it seemed that there was an unpleasant quarrel with the bookkeeper and the scholar, so they parted ways. Then he had a big fight with the scholar holding the saber of the most sacred master. It's miserable, why not be miserable? Limu remained silent. Xiago had to make an inch of it, and instead he moved away if he didn't see it well. Girls and teenagers about the same height. Just face to face, staring at each other in a daze. This group of wild monsters with very old qualifications and very high generations. In fact, we all know each other's roots, what their respective methods are, what kind of magical powers they will use, and what their destiny is. They can't be concealed. On killing power, Wu Mingshi, Xiago, Xiao Mo. On defense, it is Li Gu, Xiago, Xiao Mo. The old bamboo crown riding a deerback sword could only persuade him and said, "Don't fight inwardly." Xiago took a step forward instead, and the foreheads of both sides were about to collide with that Li Gu. Liquor stays still. Xiago suddenly leaned forward and knocked the other's forehead with his head, but his strength was not strong. It seemed that both parties were just ordinary young girls, and Li Gu's head swayed slightly, not much. Li Gu finally spoke, his voice hoarse, "Bai Jing, you can get it almost." The girl with a mink hat and red cheeks suddenly smiled brightly. "You are an ascendant realm, and you are not a sword repairer, a small trash that is not powerful enough. What do you want to do with me?" In an instant, the liming was more than 8 pieces removed, and the whole body seemed to be cut into tens of thousands of pieces. Only in an instant, the boy's body was put together again, and then shattered, in an instant, and then restored to its original appearance. Li Gu did not use any spiritual energy at all, nor did he sacrifice his life, so he soldered by himself, avoiding the inextricably dense sword energy. Bai Zhe said, "It's okay." Xiago then closed his hands and instantly gathered those sword qi. She didn't use Fei Jin either. Ah! It deserves to have learned a few unique tricks from that Taoist. The first cultivator in the world is really a talkative guy in the world, and he is not even one of the second. Because as long as anyone asks, he is willing to teach. Ask anyone casually, he is willing to teach everything. Moreover, he never hides his own personalities, he is willing to give everything to himself, and he has excellent patience. Therefore, when the Taoist priest walked around the world, he often followed a series of kikamen on the back of his buttocks, often with elm heads. Those who are enlightened must either be thinking but do not understand the true meaning, and must continue to follow the Taoist priest to ask questions, or if they have gains and are stunned, they must always stay close to the Taoist priest, so that they can be touched by the Taoist spirit. It seems that as long as you meet this Taoist priest on the road, you are his comrade. Bai Jing's roots and aptitudes are too good, and she breaks the realm too fast. It is almost as fast as the thunder, she is among the earth immortals, and then quickly into the ascendant realm, and because she is a sword repairer, she is not afraid of the sky, but she is not afraid of it, but there are not many, and there are so little things, such as Bai Zhe. But if you want to say that she feels sincerely admired, I am afraid that there is really only the Taoist priest. For the monster clan monk, since he admires someone sincerely, of course he will be more afraid of someone. Bai Zhe said, "It's okay." Xiago curled his lips and put away his sword aura. Their group of poor worms who are now equal to the homeless, the common pursuit, of course, is the 14th realm that seems to be separated by one step, but in reality it is illusory. In addition, they have their own requirements. For example, the Taoist with a bamboo crown wants to find a master. What to look for? Step back 10,000 steps and say, "I was really found by you." The Taoist back then didn't recognize you as a disciple. After 10,000 years, he will change his mind. It's just that the Wang Youwu really wants to find this person. If the other party's status has changed now, and the realm is not high enough, then it is not a teacher to learn art. What can I do if I eat it? Bai Zhe asked the other big demons to find a foothold in the city, and when they went back to discuss matters, Bai Zhe only took Bai Jing for a walk along the Lulu River. But there is another ignorant person who insists on being the drag oil bottle. It is the sharp and fierce man named Anonymous by Bai Jing's help. Xiago looked back at the man and grinned. Fortunately, Bai Zhe is next to me. Otherwise, if I change to someone walking, I will recognize the unknown person behind as a son. He has no name or surname, so I will thank my surname in the future. Xiago retracted his gaze and said, "Master Bai Zhe, I plan to take a trip to Beiju Luzhou first, and then go south to Aquarius Island. Do you think it is feasible? It's a pity that, after taking a nap, the Great Wall of Sword Qi is gone. Fortunately, there is another place in Beiju Luzhou that is known as the swordsmanship. Nothing is impossible." Bai Zhe smiled and reminded, "Thank you, I remember after the Aquarius Island, you must be especially careful not to reveal your whereabouts casually, let alone recklessly. Otherwise, if someone caught him accidentally, across the world, I can't help, and I definitely can't save you." Xiago frowned slightly. "By whom?" The man behind them smiled and asked, "Could it be that the last hermit surnamed Qin has not returned the 14 realm Dao Fa?" It would be interesting to dare to rely on Bai Yujing's 3 heads to teach Lu Qin if it is really not repaid. Unlike the great monsters like Bai Jing and Li Gu, he has actually been in a mysterious state of sleeping but not sleeping. For thousands of years, except for one soul and one soul staying in the real body, the rest of the soul is like a wandering, long-standing history. Going out and changing places constantly. Because he is a military monk. Sit back and enjoy it. Therefore, when Bai Zhe called him this time, he had to come. Even if he doesn't have the real name of the Yaozu, he still has no chance of winning against Bai Zhe, who was one of the 4 candidates for the 10 under heaven in the past. Since you can't beat it, just admit it. Bai Zhe smiled and shook his head. It has something to do with the realm, but it has nothing to do with it. Xia Go tut and exclaimed, Master Bai said so horribly, knowledge is all knowledge. Bai Zhe joked, then I wish fellow Taoist Bai Jing this trip will be fulfilled. Xia Go laughed, his body turned into a rainbow, and followed the long river of time given by Bai Zhe, breaking the sky and heading straight to the awe-inspiring world. To the north of Luzhou, Beiju, a saint sitting in the sky, with a high crown and belt, with a clear face, frowned slightly, looking at the uninvited guest from the wild world. On the side of the Confucian temple, he gave an explanation, allowing this monster monk from the wild world to travel through the vast continents and rivers within the rules. Seeing that girl wearing a shabby sable hat and 2 blushes, she didn't have a monk atmosphere. If she didn't show up here, she would be the most ordinary Murano girl. With a solemn expression, the old master asked in a deep voice, Bai Jing, can you understand Zhongti Yayan? Xia Go grinned, I came here prepared, of course I can understand people. I scolded myself first, and didn't give you scholars the chance to scold others. Xia Go patted a satchel, there are books in it, bought from all over the wild world. Watching while walking, this is called traveling thousands of miles and reading thousands of books. The old master nodded, don't break the prohibition. Xia Go waved his hand, it's necessary, it's necessary. She overlooked a continent, mountains and rivers, and heard that there are many heroes here, and she has always valued loyalty and despised life and death. If there was no sword repair in Luzhou, North Ju, and a wave of aid to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, I am afraid that the big battle that I missed before would have a different ending. The old master said, according to the agreement, we will not stare at your actions all the time. Xia Go was surprised, I'm free, I must say thank you to the little master, oh, now it's the saint of rights. The old master turned a deaf ear and reminded again, don't give the Confucian temple a chance to make a move. Xia Go nodded and said, I know that people have to bow their heads under the eaves. I understand the truth. To disrespect others is also self-disrespectful. There must be no natural anger, no righteous anger. Occasionally she had to dig up some mountain herbs and the like, and go to the mountain market to exchange some silver. She would not bargain, or the bargaining was too fierce at first, which scared the customers away. After a few losses, let the black-hearted businessmen make their own bids. In this way, Xia Go gradually bought himself dresses, pots and pans, drinks and so on. If you catch a glimpse of a wild goose in the sky, you will stand up from the ground, grab the paws of the wild goose with both hands, and swim long distances together. Although Haoren can fight in the world, almost all go to the wild world, just like this Beiju Luzhou at the foot, the real fire dragon who is said to be a local bearer, is not at Litafang now. But Xia Go was still stubborn and determined not to cause trouble. In the downhill market, Xia Go didn't care about them as he encountered some rogues who liked to go around the ghost gate. After all, I heard that the Confucian temple is now in charge of food. Isn't it a lesson for you to stop that ant? Alas, a lesson from the past, this is a good argument, there are so many books in the world today. Anyway, find the coward first before talking. If it weren't for fighting now, the first local snake she would go to for a while would be Bai Shang, who was known as the first person to repair swordsmanship in the north. Of course it wasn't about the sword. Asking a junior who was not in the Ascension realm about the sword, bullying was not. On the ridge of a Taoist palace, Xiago hides his figure, sits cross-legged, and sips a little wine with the sauced meat, watching the little Taoist boys who are holding the whisk and walking in circles. Woolen cloth. According to the introductions and explanations in several books, today's Taoist priests are much more numerous. The so-called Bugang Ta Do, there are also more and more Huatu Sutras. Taoists walk and turn, worship the stars, and ask God to come true, just like stepping on the Gang Star Do. From the earliest 3 steps and 9 trails, the constellation continues to evolve and become more and more complicated. If the stepping is combined with the pinch, there are more than 1,900 rumors. Xiago touched the mink hat, shook his head and muttered, "The more tricks, the smaller the meaning." Xiago had personally seen someone who was one of the top 10 candidates in the world, transformed into a bird to preach, and seemed to have this technique. That is the real ancestor. It's boring to watch the children walking on the trail. Xiago drank a pot of wine and moved a position. He came to a market stall and squatted to the side. As for the glutinous rice cakes, Xiago had eaten glutinous rice several times before, which was quite gluttonous. After crossing the sea quietly, Xiago came to Aquarius Island, and first took a trip to Dali capital city, and learned some Mandarin, which is the elegant dialect of Aquarius Island. Xiago finally stood outside an alley, as if inside was the house with embroidered tigers. She held a greasy pig's knuckle in both hands. Above the small alley, there was a shabby dojo the size of a snail shell. A pair of masters and disciples was nested inside. The old monk glanced at her, and Xiago pretended not to know. The old monk may be older and a little confused. He secretly asked the obviously younger disciple whether he knew who the little girl outside the alley was and if there was any background. If the little girl walks into the alley, she needs to stop. After thanking the dog, he quietly went to take a look at Longquan Jinzong. Mainly I heard that Wanqiong was the chief worshipper of the Dai dynasty, and it turned out to be a jade pure realm, but the sword-making skills were not bad. There was a young sword repairman in the mountains, who was not high in realm, but weird. He even noticed his prying, and the two sides looked at each other from a distance. I always feel that something is wrong, Xiago didn't think deeply. Finally came to Longquan County, Huaiwang County, Dalichu Prefecture. This way, except for the young sword repairman of Longquan Jinzong, it was a bit interesting, as if he hadn't seen a real big man. Xiago followed the rules here and walked on foot. He walked all the way south from Zhouqing to the small town, found a shop at the bottom of the steps, and bought some cakes to eat. After that, I walked to the Luopa mountain. Haha. You wait, I'm blocking the door. Fallen Mountain. Mountain Gate. The new janitor of Luopa Mountain, a fake Taoist priest with a wooden hairpin on his head, was sitting on a bamboo chair with Erlang's legs upright, flipping through the book sneakily there. The mink hat girl who was still some distance away from the mountain gate raised her hand and rubbed her eyes vigorously. She had already seen no surprises, and her face was still full of weirdness at the moment. Is there such a coincidence in the world? What are you afraid of? Xiaomo, you really belong to you. This is a bit too much. Back then, I hid in the Bixiao cave of Luobayan to make wine, but now it's good, so I just hid directly next to this Taoist priest. My love road is really bumpy. Distressed. Sleep. Bah, it's so difficult to make a couple. Xiago curled her lips, displayed a magical power, and her figure split into two. She suddenly snorted and looked around. Could it be that Bixiao cave master is in this mountain? We Xianwei Daoist, we have always watched and listened to all directions, but found that the visitor came near the gate of the mountain, came and ran away. The result ran, and came again. At this moment, Xianwei was completely confused. Seeing that young man with a mink hat, or maybe a girl, finally seemed to have made up his mind, and slowly walked towards the mountain gate. Xianwei quickly put the book in his arms and stood up. As a result, the man in the mink hat took a detour and moved to sit on the other side of the table. There used to be Taoist priests who wandered around the world. In addition to preaching for others, they would also build resting places next to the road, similar to pavilions for later generations, leaving a piece of Taoist text on the wall. Those who are predestined see it, get it, and practice it. Because in the eyes of Taoists, all sentient beings in the world can cultivate the Tao. What is going for the sky? Probably this is the most veritable thing, right? Xiago sat at the table, sighed faintly, restrained his mood, raised a smiling face. Xianwei found that the other party looked at him blankly with a very complicated look. You won't find yourself to recognize relatives, right? The problem is that I haven't really become lavish. When the concierge of the Luopa mountain, the salary is a little bit, but every snowflake money in my pocket is of great use. Where the duty was, Xianwei had to walk over and asked with a smile, "This fellow Taoist, do you want to drink tea?" Xiago asked, "Do you want money?" Xianwei smiled and said, "No money." Xiago smiled and said, "Then 2 pots first." Xianwei was confused again. On the Luopa mountain, Zhu Lian sat in the courtyard weaving a basket, with Bai Jing's true body sitting beside him. The latter was the original one. He talked about the cause of the incident with this thin old man who seemed to be in charge of the Luopa mountain and called himself Zhu Lian. It's so concealed, but there's nothing to be seen anyway. It comes from the wild world, the monster sword repairer, the ascendant realm. He used to be called Bai Jing, but now he is called Xiago. Come to Xiaomo to talk about the old. There is no need to worry that she will cause trouble on Luopa mountain. She didn't dare to provoke the master Bai Zhe and the little master to get angry, because none of them could be beaten. The old man always looked kind, and after listening to Xiago's self-introduction, instead of any fear, he smiled and nodded without delay. He was skillful in knitting baskets, and then he said the first sentence. Shocked, thousands of sales are nothing. At that time, the only way is common. Then the old man's next words made Xiago feel relieved and sad. When the old man spoke, he spoke slowly, not eagerly or slowly, and had an unclear charm. Thank you, girl, cross mountains and seas, come to find your sweetheart. Very good, the only thing you need to pay attention to is probably not to scare Mr. Xiaomo. In men's and women's affairs, whoever tempts first, who suffers, the more you suffer, the harder you will forget. In the end, I don't know if I like the other person or I like myself. The answer lies with the other person. That's why I said, love comes from worry. Xiago rubbed his mink hat. The old man beside him was an expert. It's just that Xiago thought about it, but still had a little disagreement. He first went to the countryside to learn from the vast world, and called the other person Mr. Zhu, and then said, "It's not about love, I have never had bitterness and hatred. The state of mind, there is nothing to worry about, I just think Xiaomo looks good, his realm is not much worse than me, if we are together, we can grow for a long time, and we are both sword repairers, and we have conversations." Zhu Lian couldn't say anything. He smiled and asked a question that Xiago couldn't think of when he broke his head. "Miss Xia, if someday Mr. Xiaomo really likes you, would you still like him?" Xiago froze for a long time, thought about it carefully, and said, "I still like it." Zhu Lian asked again, "Why did you like it in the first place?" Xiago patted his mink hat and complained a little, Mr. Zhu, I've said that, Xiao Mo thief is pretty. Wrong. The old man sitting on the bamboo chair weaving the basket, smiled and shook his head, and said softly, I don't know how to worry about this body, but I am most afraid of being gentle. Note 1. This sentence was copied from the Snow. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.